Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another live stream. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking. All right. So shout out to everybody who is in the building early. It's good to see each and every one of you. If you guys can hear me okay, please give me a thumbs up or a radiation emoji in the chat. If you guys cannot hear or cannot see for whatever reason, please give me a thumbs down or an angry face in the chat. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to shout out everybody who is gracious and wonderful enough to be in the building early, and thank you all for being here. All right. Shout out to DSB. Good to see you, bro. Shout out to Brooklyn Queen. Good to see you as always, Brooklyn Queen. And everybody show Brooklyn Queen some love for some off-rip ducats. Definitely appreciate you funding the organization.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
Cash rules everything around me. Queen, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
Definitely appreciate it, Brooklyn Queen. Brooklyn Queen says, peace, BLR and family. Hit the like button, subscribe, tap the notification bell twice for more great content. Join the Discord link or join the Discord by hitting the link. Absolutely great advice. Would you guys agree? If y'all agree that that's great advice, give me some flames in the chat. If y'all don't think it's great advice, then give me an angry face. Shout out to my man DSB for the other off-rip ducats. All right. Shout out to DSB. Definitely appreciate it. And we got to give DSB double drops because DSB hooked it up in a premiere earlier. So shout out to DSB. Make sure y'all show him some love, throw some flames, some radiation emoji, some ducks, money bags in the chat for DSB.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
Cash rules everything around me. Queen, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
Silence. I ain't got no money, pop.
Shout out to DSB. I'll match it. Definitely appreciate it. In fact, if y'all agree with Tedra that the Discord be lit, y'all know what to do. So we're going to talk about this situation with Facebook. All right, Meta. How many people have heard about what happened with Facebook and Meta? Some very interesting, odd, weird things that we've kind of speculated on before, but now we actually got the evidence to prove it, and we got the evidence to back it up. All right, but as you guys know, that's going to be toward the end of the stream. We're going to talk about some other things first. The first thing that we're going to talk about is how many people have heard there's going to be an interview with Kamala Harris. CNN is doing an interview. So they finally broke from the pressure. They're going to do an interview now. This interview is going to be on CNN. How many people heard about that? Now, it's funny how things change because I heard about this earlier today. And when I heard about it, it was presented different than how it's being presented now. What's kind of odd about this CNN debate that Kamala Harris is going to have? Do you guys notice anything kind of odd about it? There's an article that came out from the Hollywood Reporter, as you guys can see right here. Okay, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger for y'all. CNN lands Kamala Harris and Tim Walz joint interview. Now, that's not the same as just interviewing Kamala Harris, right? They're doing a joint interview. Right? It's not the same thing. So now here it says CNN lands Kamala Harris and Tim Walz joint interview. The special titled The First Interview, Harris and Walz, a CNN exclusive, will air Thursday at 9 o'clock p.m. All right. So now you know what we got to do. Got to ask y'all, How many of y'all want to take a look at this when this happens? If you guys want to look at it, make sure that you guys either comment after the video or comment in here and let us know if you guys want us to cover that. All right. So now here it says Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz will have their first joint interview on CNN since becoming the Democratic presidential and vice presidential nominees this week. Now, a joint interview, if you ask me, this doesn't count as them just getting an interview. So this still doesn't satisfy the criteria for the critiques that Kamala Harris has been getting of not getting an interview, because this is a team interview. This is a joint interview. They're going to be interviewing two of them at a time, or both of them at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Black Free Thinker. What's good with it, bro? Shout out to DJ Elmo. Right? The pair will sit down exclusively with CNN anchor and chief political correspondent Dana Bash in Georgia, a crucial battleground state in the November election. And they sitting down and getting interviewed by Dana Bash. And Dana Bash don't really be, she just gonna ask him questions, I think. You know what I'm saying? She kind of don't be, a lot of times don't really be playing into that two sides thing, if you ask me. She kind of just be rogue out there with it. Just, she don't care about making people look good, or she don't care about making them look bad. You know what I'm saying? So the interview also marks Harris's first network sit-downs interview since replacing Joe Biden on the Democratic ticket after he stepped down last month. All right. So you guys see that right there, right? The interview also marks Harris's first network sit-down interview since replacing Joe Biden on the Democratic ticket after he stepped down last month. Now, mind you, they'll take this at some point later and try to frame it as misinformation and say that she's been taking interviews all along. But this is not the same. And I got to agree. Shout out to Black Free Thinker. If you guys agree with Black Free Thinker, this is going to be softball questions. Give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree and you don't think it's going to be softball questions, give me a thumbs down. All right. So now here it says it's also a first for Walz since being announced as Harris' running mate on August 6th. So again, we just got to ask, because these things are kind of weird. Why is it taking these people so long to talk to somebody? Why is it taking people so long to taking these people so long to talk to somebody? Shout out to Brooklyn Queen. Brooklyn Queen says, yes, please cover it if scheduling allows. It's on Thursday. Yeah, I should be able to do it on Thursday. They said it come out at 9 o'clock. I don't know if they're airing it live like a premiere or what, but I should be able to do it. If not, we could always do it like the next day or whatever. You know what I'm saying? If you guys are in agreement with Brooklyn Queen and y'all want that interview covered, make sure y'all throw the thumbs up in the live chat during the stream, or make sure that you guys after the stream comment that, yes, you want that. All right. The special titled The First Interview, Harris and Walz, a CNN exclusive, will air Thursday, August 29th at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Pacific Time, across CNN's platforms. All right, so for people that's interested in what time it's supposed to come out, now you know. Harris and Walz have been busy on the campaign trail, as well as headlining an energized 2024 Democratic National Convention last week, which averaged around 21.8 million viewers in prime time. The star-studded convention saw state delegates, notable politicians, celebrities, and more fill Chicago's United Center Arena throughout the 4-day event. And you know what you know what else didn't fill the United Arena during that 4-day event? Many discussions about policy. But again, this is something new. You know what I'm saying? It's only been a little more than 5 weeks since Harris officially launched her campaign for the White House after Biden withdrew from the election following calls for him to step down due to his disastrous debate with Donald Trump in June. Biden then proceeded to endorse Harris to take his place at the top of the ticket. Now, let me ask you guys this question. If Biden had a disastrous debate and he's dropping out, right? And the reason why he's dropping out is because he doesn't seem very cognitive, or he doesn't seem very smart. Is it smart for people to take his advice and follow his endorsement of Kamala Harris? Because we just said this guy dropped out and was, we questioned him because of his intelligence, because of his cognitive ability. And with his intelligence and that same cognitive ability, he's telling people to support Kamala Harris. So does that make sense logically? I wouldn't even want an endorsement from Biden, honestly, if I was her. You know what I'm saying? To me, I mean, I guess it sounds good, name recognition, but logically it doesn't make any sense, because his word can't be trusted. It's not even known whether he's competent or not. So now here it says, since then, Harris has not done any extensive interviews with any major media outlets. However, she said earlier in August that she planned to do a sit-down interview by the end of the month. All right. So there's that. There is that. All right. So why am I bringing that up? I'm bringing that up to bring this up. An article came out from the Chicago Tribune. We're going to take a quick look at it. All right. Here's the Chicago Tribune article. Kamala Harris will sit down with CNN for her first interview since launching presidential bid. Sounds very different than how it was presented in the Hollywood Reporter, doesn't it? If that sounds different than how it was presented in the Hollywood Reporter, give me a thumbs up. If it doesn't, then give me a thumbs down. All right. No, did they leave? What did they leave out? Do you notice that something was left out here? Something kind of important. Something kind of important was left out a little bit. What did they leave out? Let me know what they left out. And shout out to everybody watching. I appreciate you guys. If y'all haven't hit that like button yet, take a moment, hit the like button. Also, if you guys haven't hit the bell, take a moment, hit that bell. And also, please share this to your social media. So now here says she will be joined by her running mate. Oh, they put that in fine print there. Not on the headline. Tim Walz in a joint interview with CNN anchor Dana Bash in Savannah, Georgia. The interview will air 8 o'clock p.m. Thursday Central Time. Harris has been criticized for not holding news conferences or granting interviews with news outlets since Biden stepped aside on July of 2021. Now, here's my thing. All these things that they're saying as far as like pressure mounting against Trump and all of this stuff, yada, yada, yada. If all this pressure was quote unquote mounting against Trump, wouldn't Trump be the one reacting? To me, it's a bad sign when you're reacting directly to criticisms that are majority coming from your opposition. That kind of means that you're substantiating their critiques, which means that you know that you're kind of underperforming. And then to react to it like this, and one of the biggest things that people say about you is that you're not able to articulate, you're not able to think quickly on your feet. To do that and then have your hand held by your vice president, I don't think that does much in the way of credibility. Shout out to Kid Gravity. What's good with it, bro? You guys think that does anything in the way of the credibility? Let me know what you guys think. So now here it says Donald Trump's campaign has kept a tally of the days she has gone by as a candidate without giving an interview. And again, if you ask me, this shouldn't count because this is a joint interview. This shouldn't count. Her interviews, it should only count as a Kamala Harris interview if she does it by herself, not a joint one. If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down. On Tuesday, the campaign reacted to the news by noting the interview was joint, saying she's not competent enough to do it on her own. And again, they literally walked right into that one. I mean, they walked right into it. Whoever they have doing the PR, not very good strategy. Earlier this month, Harris had told reporters that she wanted to do her first formal interview before the end of August. Okay. So there's that. That's it. So now we know 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, CNN, we're going to get the joint debate with Kamala Harris and okay. So now apparently there is also something else going on in battleground states. They're trying to make some law changes. It's very interesting how these laws start changing around voting time. And on top of it, they're doing it in the battleground states. So let's take a look at this.
As we wind our way to the November election, some key states are still debating and battling over brand new election rule changes. As our Lisa Desjardins explains, in some prominent cases, these are Republican-led and pushed by former President Donald Trump himself.
Now, what do you guys think about that? Let me know what you guys think about that. And shout out to everybody that's watching. I really appreciate you guys. Let me see what we got. We got 15 people watching. And we got 11 likes. If everybody could take a moment, smash that like button and get us to 20, that'd be great.
In just the past few weeks, the Georgia Election Board has passed changes that could affect this year's election. Among them, local officials could launch an investigation after results are in, and each local official could demand to examine all election documents, presumably including each ballot. If there's a discrepancy in ballot and voter count.
Now, let me ask you guys this. What's the purpose of them doing this? What's the strategy behind this? Why are they looking into this so carefully? Let me know what you guys think.
No vote from such a precinct would count. Former President Donald Trump has recently praised by name the 3 board members who passed those rules as fighting for honesty and victory. This week, the national and state Democratic parties filed a lawsuit citing current Georgia law and writing election officials are free to voice concerns at the time of certification, but they may not point to those election irregularities or anything else as a basis for delaying certification or denying it entirely. To look at this and voting law changes in other states, I'm joined by Jessica Huseman of VoteBeat. Jessica, let's start right there in Georgia, obviously a hotly contested state. We see Vice President Harris there this week. What do we know about what Georgia election law says about certification, and can these rules stand?
I have a really difficult time seeing how they could, but I'm not an attorney. The law in Georgia does say that local boards shall certify the election by a given date. It does not give them any room to not do that, and essentially accepts it as a predetermined conclusion. So I think that the law in Georgia is very clear as to what they need to do. And if they behave accordingly, then they will do the same thing they did last year.
Now, this comes from a newly configured election board. Georgia legislature changed the law to change this board. No longer sitting on this board is the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, someone who our viewers might remember was on that phone call with former President Trump, who wanted him to find some votes. Raffensperger refused. Now, Raffensperger has called out what he sees happening on the election board, saying it's a mess and saying it's misguided attempts by the state election board will delay election results and undermine chain of custody safeguards. Jessica, we are just...
Now, let me ask you guys this. Does this have anything to do with voting rights? Question for everybody. If this has something to do with voting rights, give me a thumbs up and let me know what it has to do with voting rights. If it doesn't, then give me a thumbs down and let me know what you guys think this is all about.
69 days away from this election. I know you're saying what the law looks like, but can the courts actually move through this quickly enough, or is it possible that there will be confusion about this on election day?
There's certainly a possibility that they could move quickly enough, right? Courts tend to move very quickly ahead of elections because they don't want to affect things too close to the day of the election. But the amount of time that courts consider too close is getting shorter and shorter and shorter every year. And so, yes, there could definitely be some confusion here. I think that if it gets even into the middle of September, we're going to start seeing some antsy feelings on the part of Georgia Democrats, especially. But ultimately, the courts do have it in their power to fix this.
If this is allowed to stay in place close to or right out election day, do you think any of these counties are ready to use these kinds of powers, and exactly for what?
You know, I'm sure that they are. I think that
now, let me ask you guys this. How many of you all think that come November, there's going to be a major election count, vote count controversy with this election like there was in 2020? If you think that there will be, give me a thumbs up. If you guys think that there's not going to be, then give me a thumbs down.
There are a lot of very red counties across the country that have been sort of playing with the idea of refusing to certify local election results. But in the past, that has not been successful, basically anywhere that it's been tried. And I don't see why it would be different in Georgia. Local boards are under a lot of pressure to certify from the people who live in the community. You can only certify your own election. And so if you choose not to certify your local results, that means you're preventing local candidates from taking office. And any of those people could sue. That's what's happened in the past when counties across the country have tried to do this. And I think that there probably will be a few counties in Georgia that push their luck here, but probably reverse course very quickly.
Do you have a sense of how much of this, for the election board members who really haven't spoken out too much outside of their meetings, how much of this is about their concerns over election security? How much of this could be what we hear from Donald Trump, trying to set up a scenario where there's doubt if he loses?
It's hard to say. I think that the Republican Party has gone all in with Donald Trump on these claims of voter fraud and non-citizen voting and bloated voter rolls, none of which are true. But because they've thrown themselves so far in line behind him, it's hard to say whether or not this is something they actually believe or if this is a party line. At the end of the day, I'm not sure that it makes much of a difference. This is a political determination.
Shout out to Carlton. Carlton says, unfortunately, Harris will win based on my observation. It looks like they're doing a lot. They're doing a lot to try to get that to happen. Let me ask you guys what you all think. How many of you all agree with Carlton If you guys agree with Carlton, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down. And also, shout out to my man DeAndre for being a like enforcer. Make sure y'all throw some like enforcers in the chat. Definitely appreciate the like enforcement.
It's definitely going to impact the efficacy of a vote.
And you mentioned those questions about non-citizens voting, and we know just this week or in the past week, the Supreme Court has ruled in on the Arizona law and given Arizona Republicans a sort of partial victory, saying that they can enforce some of the Arizona election law, which basically would mean, if I have this right, that people without an ID at the ballot box would have to fill out a special federal form to vote in the presidential election. That's something that a lot of Republicans are saying was a victory for them. Do you think?
I don't think you should have to show ID to vote. The fact is already bad enough that they don't require you to show ID to vote. Like, to me, like, that process is very wild.
That's going to make a difference at the polls or not in November?
It's hard to say. Past examples of voters having to fill out forms at polls do not suggest necessarily that voters will be tremendously dissuaded from voting as a result of that. So, for example, in Texas, if you do not have an ID, you have to fill out what's called a reasonable impediment declaration here. That does not seem to have been a barrier in recent elections. And so if this is implemented well by local election officials, it should be pretty seamless.
The right often raises this idea that perhaps there are too many people voting. We know there are not many instances of voter fraud. But on the left, the concern is sometimes about too few and purging voter rolls. Texas just announced that there's been about 1 million purged as part of its regular countywide.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Shout out to Cameron. I agree 100%. And if you don't have an ID, well, then you just can't vote until you get one. Like, it's not, I mean, that's just what it is. I don't understand why the rules get changed and bent. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Purging and voter rolls for those who are deceased, et cetera. Is there anything this year to be concerned about, or is that standard procedure?
So removing people from the voter roll is very well controlled. There's federal laws that dictate when and how someone can be removed from the voter roll and what kind of notice they have to give to the people who they're attempting to remove. And so none of those things have changed in the last few years. That federal law has remained the same. And we're actually currently within the window that those federal laws allow, such that no one can be removed from the rolls at this point from now until the election. So if you're on the rolls now, you're going to stay on the rolls through to the end of the election. That will not change. But I think it's important for people to know that there is a universe of federal law that does apply to this, that dictates when someone is made inactive and how long they must be inactive and how much notice they need to be given in the mail in order to remove that person from the voter roll. So this is not an overnight process, and it's a process very tightly controlled.
Jessica Houston, a very clear look at some big concerns. We appreciate you.
All right, so there's that. Very interesting. And this is something that you see all the time. This is something that you see all the time during the election season, right around the time when it's time for things to get going. Then they'll start trying to tighten up some laws or make new laws or add new laws. And also one thing that they'll do is they'll try to get you emotionally involved in it by saying your rights are somehow under a threat and yada, yada, yada. We've seen this all the time. We know exactly what it is, right? We know exactly what it is. So how many people heard former President Trump? He already has come out and stated, yes, I will debate Kamala Harris. Shout out to DJ Elmo. What's good with it, bro? He's already said it. So all of the speculation and all that stuff that we talked about yesterday, as far as a debate, quote unquote, not happening, as far as it goes on Trump's end, Trump has come out and said, regardless, whatever happens, I'm debating her. So we're going to take a look at that real quick.
Former President Donald Trump has just announced that despite hedging and saying that he potentially may skip it, he does plan to go ahead with the debate with Vice President Kamala Harris just 2 weeks from.
So you guys see this now, right? So now let me ask you guys this. All of this narrative that's being put forward, as far as quote unquote, him not wanting to debate or him being scared to debate, does this right here make it seem as if he's scared to debate? Shout out to DeAndre. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you were in here before, bro, but that was the very first thing that we talked about right at the beginning of the stream. Facts. And I think they said it's 9 p.m. Eastern time, 8 o'clock p.m. Central time. And we're going to react to it. We had, you know what I'm saying? Everybody said they wanted to see a reaction to it. So we definitely going to do that.
From today.
He made
This official just moments ago posting on Truth Social that he has reached an agreement to face off with Harris in their first head-to-head debate on September 10th on ABC.
Shout out to Shaka. What's good with it, bro?
And CNN's Kristen Holmes. Kristen, tell us what you're learning.
Well, Brianna, what we are told is that this impasse between the Harris and Trump campaign appears to be over. And the big, remember, issue that both sides were having was over whether or not the mics would be muted. In that first debate that Donald Trump did on CNN, they essentially had agreed to muting the mics while the other candidate was talking. Donald Trump's team thought that worked out well for him. Well, then we heard from Harris's team saying they didn't actually want those mics muted. So this has led to a sort of impasse. They were not happy with it. Donald Trump's team said they wanted the CNN rules. Now they are saying that they have come to an agreement with Kamala Harris and that it's going to be broadcast on ABC Rules. As we know, the rules will be the same as the last CNN debate. This is what Donald Trump is saying, which seemed to work out well for everyone except Joe Biden. And then it says the debate will be, quote, stand up, meaning they won't be seated. The candidates cannot bring notes or, quote, cheat sheets. We've also been given assurance by ABC that this will be a fair and equitable debate and that neither side will be given the questions in advance. I did call a senior advisor after Donald Trump put this out to make sure about this issue on muting the mics. They said, yes, it does mean that the mics will be muted while the other candidate is speaking. So this would be a win for Donald Trump's team here. We have not gotten comment from the Harris side of things, but
so you guys see this, right? So I want you guys to pay attention to what ended up happening. What ended up happening was basically they just made a whole big deal out of nothing. Shout out to Jada Informant. What's good with it, bro? They just made a whole big deal out of nothing. And still somehow trying to push the narrative that it's Trump who's afraid to debate.
I did speak, as I said, to that senior advisor who seemed very pleased with the fact that this debate was moving forward and with those same rules that we had during our debate when it was Donald Trump and President Joe Biden earlier this year.
And Kristen Holmes, thank you so much for that. Let's get the perspective from the Harris camp with CNN's Eva McKen. Eva, the Harris team tried to box Trump in with having the mics unmuted. They even put out ads insinuating that he was too chicken to debate her.
So again, and I want you guys to pay very close attention, right? Now, let me ask you guys this. Is CNN, quote unquote, pandering to Trump? Is that what's happening right now?
Our debate when it was Donald Trump and President Joe Biden earlier this year.
And Kristen Holmes, thank you so much for that. Let's get the perspective from the Harris camp with CNN's Eva McKen. Eva, the Harris team tried to box Trump in with having the mics unmuted. They even put out ads insinuating that he was too chicken to debate her. What are you hearing now?
Boris, they did. It seemed like the strategy was to mock him and try to get under his skin, as they often have, to push them to the terms that they wanted.
So now you see this woman here. She substantiated the stuff that we were talking about earlier, how they came out with that wide sweeping narrative of everybody mock Trump, everybody make fun of Trump. And so this woman comes on here now and she substantiates that, yes, this was the goal. How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is that, y'all? Like, that's crazy. Shout out to y'all. I appreciate y'all. If you guys haven't smashed the like button yet, please take a moment and smash the like button. We got 19 people watching and we got 26 likes. Let's try to get the likes to 40.
Forward and with those same rules that we had during our debate when it was Donald Trump and President Joe Biden.
Shout out to my man DSB. Make sure you guys show DSB some love for the $5 super chat. Definitely appreciate it, bro.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the march of dimes.
Get the money, y'all. There's poor people around. I'm rich, biatch.
Cash rules everything around me. Queen, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
Biden earlier this year.
And Kristen Holmes, thank you so much for that. Let's get the perspective from the Harris camp with CNN's Eva McKen. Eva, the Harris team tried to box Trump in with having the mics unmuted. They even put out ads insinuating that he was too chicken to debate her. What are you hearing now?
So again, what you see is that they just don't care. They're making up narratives and just going with narratives as they go. It doesn't even matter if it's real or not. Like, how wild is that? Like it doesn't even matter if a narrative is real or not. We're just going to say anything and go with it and try to push it. And this is literally what they've been doing for a very long time.
Or as they did, it seemed like the strategy was to mock him and try to get under his skin, as they often have, to push them to the terms that they wanted. We're still waiting to hear if this means the mics will in fact be unmuted for the duration of the debate like the Harris camp requested. But ultimately, Harris's allies, they're telling me that—
Shout out to DSB. Make sure y'all show DSB some love. DSB showing big love. Throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for DSB funding the organization.
Silence! Silence! I ain't got no money, pa.
This is the hardest record out.
Shout out to DSB. DSB says, while they mock Trump, he's going to win the election. Remember me saying this. I am not voting. It's couch for me. Facts. If y'all with DSB on the couch, throw some couches in the chat.
they're eager for this matchup because in their view, it will show a stark contrast. They are banking on Trump interjecting, ranting, raving, airing grievances. We know that in his own words, in his own description, he's saying that he doesn't have to prepare much for this, that he can sort of just be his natural self. We, of course, know he is preparing, and he does sort of downplay this. But what we have seen from the vice president, especially over these last 5 weeks, is that she prepares intensely. We know that she is preparing intensely for it.
She's preparing intensely probably because she needs a lot of preparation because she's not very good at that. It takes a lot of preparation to prepare when you're not already good at something. Shout out to Black Freethinker. Black Freethinker says, I'll state it again. The very fact that political strategists find that such adolescent behavior will, quote unquote, actually go over with the American electorate is an argument for the U.S. becoming a dictatorship. Bro, facts. If you guys agree with Black Freethinker, throw some flames in the chat.
This debate, and ultimately she's a disciplined messenger and her activities are tightly choreographed. So if you have that as a contrast up on that stage against the former president, that is something that they're really relying on will work out in their favor. But we're still waiting to hear back from them on this whole muted mics issue.
All right, Eva, we'll look forward to that. Thank you. Let's talk about this now with our political experts. We have former Special Assistant to President George W. Bush, Scott Jennings, former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent of Pennsylvania. He's also a senior advisor with Our Republican Legacy. And Jamal Simmons is back with us, a former comms director for Vice President Harris. Scott, to you first, because the campaign for Trump had been clear. They wanted the mics muted like we saw in the initial debate with Biden. Then you heard Trump on the campaign trail saying it didn't really matter. I guess it did matter. And I wonder what your reaction is to this news, Trump saying that the mics will be muted.
Well, I think having a debate is good for Trump because if he doesn't pin Kamala Harris down on her record and what she's done as vice president and her previous statements when she ran for president before, I don't think anyone else is going to do it for him. So he needs this debate. So from a Republican's perspective, it's good that it's happening. The CNN rules worked for him before. It seemed to be fine. And so if this is the agreement and this is how they got it done, then good for Team Trump. I've never been all that interested in the minutia of the rules. I just wanted to make sure they had a debate because I think the American people deserve to see one. And so if we're going to have that on the 10th, that's a good thing.
Charlie, from your view, who stands to benefit most from the microphones being muted while the opponent is speaking?
Now, that's a good question. Let me know what you guys think in the chat of who you all think is going to benefit the most from this.
Well, I kind of agree with Scott. The fact they're having the debate is important. Rules are less significant. But I think Trump actually benefits from having the mics muted because he's prone to outbursts. And with the mics off, you're less likely to hear them. It's one way to keep him somewhat controlled. So I think that's a victory for Trump that they've muted those mics. Probably better for him. I see why Harris wanted the mics on. She thought she could probably trigger Trump to say something pretty outrageous and pick it up on the mic. So that's a victory for the Trump team.
Yeah, she wants to show that he has an impulse control problem. And Jamal, I wonder what you think about this news when it comes to mics.
Well, first of all, we're taking Donald Trump's word for it. So I'm going to just take that with a grain of salt. But let's assume that it's true. It might just be true that the Harris campaign was trolling Trump, looking for a way to get under his skin every day. And it does seem like if you pay attention to some of the social media that's out there, that they are really doing a very good job at just needling him every single day. They're playing a lot of offense on this campaign. And that's the kind of thing that Democrats want to see. And it's the kind of thing that I think ultimately hurts Trump. Look, Trump right now is 0 for 1 when it comes to debates, right? Like he may think that he won that debate, but it might be that he actually lost the war because of.
Is that dude for real at the bottom there? What? Is he being serious? Wow. What do you guys think about what you guys what do you guys think about that?
Taking Donald Trump's word for it. So I'm going to just take that with a grain of salt. But let's assume that it's true. It might just be true that the Harris campaign was trolling Trump, looking for a way to get under his skin every day. And it does seem like, if you pay attention to some of the social media that's out there, that they are really doing a very good job at just needling him every single day. They're playing a lot of offense on this campaign. And that's the kind of thing that Democrats want to see. And it's the kind of thing that I think ultimately hurts Trump. Look, Trump right now is 0 for 1 when it comes to debates, right? Like, he may think that he won that debate, but it might be that he actually lost the war.
Man, shout out to Cameron. Shout out to Cameron.
Why are you gay?
Yeah, I'm confused. Not like he is, though.
Because of that debate. Because after that debate, Joe Biden left. And when Joe Biden left, he ended up with Kamala Harris. So he should be careful.
0 for 1. Jamal, my brother and colleague. 0 for 1. He literally ran a man who'd been in politics for 52 years out of his chosen profession over a debate. I mean, look, I understand.
I should have said that.
Trump won the debate. He is not 0 for 1.
You can't make this up. Somebody is clearly delusional. Right. Shout out to DC Precise. Right. Silence. Right. You know what I'm saying?
What kind of shit is that?
Idiots! I'm surrounded by incompetent idiots! I've got morons on my team!
Man. Shout out to Tetra. What y'all say about men without no facial hair? Look at it. You gotta watch out for them. You gotta watch out for them booty cheek face people, man. You know what I'm saying? You gotta watch out for them.
For what? Are you saying he actually did so well that he did badly?
But this is exactly the problem with campaigns. Very often people are focused on the minutia of what it means in this tack or that tack. But the question is, are you winning the fundamental argument? And for right now, Donald Trump may have tactically won the debate, but strategically, it may have cost him the entire election because he ended up with a much better candidate than the one he was aiming for.
This honestly, let's just say that you say that to me, that's not fair. That's still not a fair assessment. You know what I'm saying? How do you get to what if a team was getting so bad? What if a team was getting beat so bad in the first quarter? Like, imagine this was a boxing match, right? And you were beating up your opponent, and you beat the brakes off your opponent so bad in the first 2 rounds that instead of getting a TKO, instead of stopping the match, they said, you know what, we're going to bring in a fresh fighter, and you can fight this fighter. And then if you lose to that fighter, they turn around and say that it's a L. How? What kind of logic is that? Did that make any sense?
The question is, are you winning the fundamental argument? And for right now, Donald Trump may have tactically won the debate, but strategically, it may have cost him the entire election because he ended up with a much better candidate than the one he was aiming for. And he's probably now a couple of points behind.
Charlie, I'm curious from your perspective, because Scott is presenting in a certain way. Obviously, Jamal is making the argument that Trump may have won the battle, but he lost the war. But this idea that Trump won the last debate based on his own answers, based on his own responses, how much do you think his success had to do with what happened to Joe Biden rather than his own ability to stay on message and to drive points home to the American?
Well, what happened to Joe Biden? I think that's still a mystery. I don't think anybody knows. Because according to the mainstream media, there was nothing that was wrong with Joe Biden. And then Joe Biden kind of just turned off during the debate. So I guess that's another question. What is wrong with Joe Biden? Shout out to the Geek Surgeon. What's good with it, bro? And shout out to everybody watching. I appreciate you guys. We got 22 people watching and we got 28 likes. If everybody could take a moment, smash that like button and get us to 50, that'd be great. Also, if you're not subscribed, take a moment, hit that bell, subscribe. Also, if you haven't shared, share your stream, share the stream to your social media, tag a friend.
American people.
Well, at the time, I thought that Trump did not lose the debate. I thought Joe Biden lost the debate. I don't know that Trump actually won it. I mean, it's not like he made a whole lot of great points. He got caught in a lot of lies and false statements. So he didn't do himself any damage. He looked reasonably controlled, but I wouldn't go so far as to say Trump won. I'd say that Biden just lost miserably because he demonstrated to the public that he did not seem to be fit and was incapable of serving another
Jerry, what's good with it, bro?
years fully. I think that was the real issue. So I wouldn't go so far as to say Trump won.
Very interesting point. Jamal, interview with Harris coming up at some point here soon, we presume. Talk to us a little bit about the stakes here when we find out who she's interviewing with, what that's going to signify.
Well, the campaign is probably sorting through a lot of different questions, right? First of all, you do an interview not because they'd love to make Boris and Brianna happy. They do an interview because they want to move forward some part of the campaign agenda, right? They got something to advance. And so the question is, what voters are they trying to talk to, and what outlet are those voters paying attention to? So what you may see is maybe there's a mix. Maybe there's local news. Maybe there's national news. Maybe there's radio and print mixed into this. So we don't exactly know.
Shout out to my man DSB contributing to the March of Dimes. Definitely appreciate it, bro. Y'all know what to do. Show DSB some love for funding the organization.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes. How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
How many of y'all seen the March of Dimes emoji? I think DeAndre using it. Yeah, we got the March of Dime emoji in the building too.
Oh, how it is they're going to come up with this because they haven't told us yet. But I got to say, when you're doing this and you're thinking about this, you're not just thinking about doing an interview for interview's sake. You're doing it because you're trying to accomplish a strategic purpose, and the campaign just hasn't had a reason, a purpose to do an interview to this point. I would argue it's time for them to do something because the American public.
How have they not? How seriously? Just the simple fact that you're running and petitioning to be the leader of the quote unquote, as they call it, free world. That's enough of a reason why you need to be giving an interview. What are you talking about? Would you guys agree or would you disagree? I mean, what is this dude talking about? If anything, I mean, like that's the sole reason why you would do this, right?
Who she's interviewing with, what that's going to signify?
Well, the campaign is probably sorting through a lot of different questions, right? First of all, you do an interview not because they'd love to make Boris and Brianna happy. They do an interview because they want to move forward some part of the campaign agenda, right? They got something to advance. And so the question is, what voters are they trying to talk to, and what outlet are those voters paying attention to? So what you may see is maybe there's a mix. Maybe there's local news. Maybe there's national news. Maybe there's radio and print mixed into this. So we don't exactly know how it is they're going to come up with this because they haven't told us yet. But I got to say,
I got to agree. Shout out to DeAndre. DeAndre said, bro just can't give a straight answer, shaking my head. Now, let me ask you guys this. Do you all think that Kamala Harris is going to debate in the same fashion as this guy is answering questions? Shout out to the Geek Surgeon. The Geek Surgeon says there is no agenda, but a hidden one. Facts.
You're doing this and you're thinking about this, you're not just thinking about doing an interview for interview's sake. You're doing it because you're trying to accomplish a strategic purpose, and the campaign just hasn't had a reason, a purpose to do an interview to this point. I would argue it's time for them to do something because the American public needs to hear from the candidate on some of these issues. And I think we're going to see that based on what Vice President Harris said, which is that they're going to do something by the end of the month.
Scott, what would you counsel if you were counseling Kamala Harris? How would you suggest that she approach an interview in which she's going to be asked about her positions morphing over time?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, look at the amount of hand-wringing going on in the Harris campaign over one simple decision. They cannot figure out how to, where to, when to, and who to do an interview with. One simple decision. We want to put her in charge of the country and make all kinds of complex decisions. They can't even decide when and how to do an interview.
Now, this is what I was talking about the other night with the multitasking. This is what I was talking about the other night with the multitasking. If you're going to be the president, you've got to be able to multitask. Shout out to LC56. LC56 said, a lot of splaining for real, for real. Facts. If y'all agree with LC56, throw some flames in the chat.
Talentless, scandalous, plebiscite, babbling.
Yeah.
So that concerns me. If I were counseling them, I would say, pick somebody and go in and be prepared to face the discrepancies in your record. You got all these anonymous press statements now saying you don't support any of the stuff you used to support. You're going to have to tackle it head on. That's number one. Number two, she's going to have to say Joe Biden made some mistakes. I mean, she can't run on Biden's record. She can't run on his plan. She's going to have to show up and say, he did this, this, and this. I disagreed, but he's number one. I'm number two. I've learned from the experience. If she's not willing to do that, she's going to wear Biden. It's going to make it hard to win. Because if she isn't willing to separate on a specific policy issue or two or a decision, Trump's going to have her for the rest of the fall, basically as a continuation of the Biden agenda. So
would you guys agree with that? That's literally the same thing that I said for the most part. Same thing that I said for the most part. I just thought of something. I just thought of something that I'm gonna do for you guys that just made me think. Just made me think about something. Oh man, you guys are great. You guys are great. Hold on real quick. I just want to see something else here. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. All right, so now what we're about to do is now we're about to go into the interesting stuff. Now we're about to go into the real interesting stuff. And shout out to DSB again. DSB is holding it down, man. Make sure y'all show DSB some love. Throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for DSB.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the march of dimes.
This is the hardest record out.
Cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
Definitely appreciate it, bro. And shout out to DSB for standing on business, growing the organization with the 5 gifted memberships. Definitely appreciate it. We are moving towards 300 members, y'all. And everybody's active too, which is really good. So shout out to y'all, man. Definitely appreciate it.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the march of dimes.
I'm standing on business. I'm standing on business. I'm standing on business.
Definitely appreciate it. So now, who has been following what's going on with Meta, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, that entire thing? If you guys have, give me a thumbs up. If you guys have not, then give me a thumbs down. Now, you guys remember the video that I did about RFK, where RFK was granted the ability to move forward with the lawsuit that he had that was discussing how his organization had been censored by the Biden administration as a result of their stance on the juice. You guys recall that? This, interestingly, further substantiates that. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to my man DSB. My man DSB said, I told you I'm always good, family. Yo, I appreciate it, bro. Again, make sure y'all show big love to DSB. You know what I'm saying? DSB trying to get that Tesla X ownership stake in Blacklight Industrial. I ain't mad at it. You know what I'm saying? We need the R&D. You know what I'm saying? We need the R&D funds.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the march of dimes.
Silence! Silence! I ain't got no money, pa.
Got the money, y'all. There's poor people around.
I'm rich, biatch.
Definitely appreciate it, bro. Look at that. DSB again. Make sure y'all throw some big flames, big money bags, big ducks in the chat for DSB. Because he's super chatting again and again and again.
Again! Again!
These drops be hilarious.
Silence! Silence! I ain't got no money, pa.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the march of dimes.
Shout out to DSB again with the gifted membership. Make sure you guys show DSB some love, show some big love, throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for DSB.
Get the money, y'all. There's poor people around.
I'm rich, biatch. Cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, yo.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
And shout out to DSB again, and shout out to the anonymous tip. Make sure you guys show some love. All right, definitely appreciate it.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
This is the hardest record out.
Cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, yo.
Shout out to DSB. Shout out to DSB again. Make sure y'all throw some big flames, big love, big money bags, big ducks in the chat for DSB. Because we just got to ask. We appreciate it.
What kind of shit is that?
Oh, man. That's hilarious. It's DSB with that super chat. If I could find the drop, man. I don't know what be going on with. They be changing it. Oh, here we go.
Again!
Cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, yo.
This is the hardest record out.
Silence, silence. I ain't got no money, pa.
Definitely appreciate it, bro. And shout out to Jerry Bedford with the big 5. Oh, make sure y'all show Jerry some love. Throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for Jerry Bedford funding the organization. Definitely appreciate it, bro.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
Get the money, y'all. There's poor people around.
I'm rich, biatch. Cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, yo.
Shout out to you, bro. Definitely appreciate it. All right. Let me see. About to run this over here real quick. Boom, boom. If y'all haven't smashed that like button yet, take a moment, smash that like button. Also, if you guys haven't hit that bell, please take a moment, hit that bell. And also, please share the stream to your social media. This is very interesting. And I think this is going to give you guys some very interesting insights.
Well, the CEO of the social media giant Meta revealing that his company censored some of its content around the COVID-19 pandemic. Mark Zuckerberg says his teams didn't want to, but they were under serious pressure from the Biden administration. And he is telling members of Congress that this will not happen again. Well, Arsalan Sarfati is following this from Washington. This is fascinating. This revelation came in a letter from Mark Zuckerberg, as I understand it, the House Judiciary Committee. What more do we know about what is in that letter?
Yeah, Becky, it's a very strongly worded letter sent from Mark Zuckerberg to the House Judiciary Committee, who's been pushing for more information about the spread of potential disinformation, the spread of information, and potential censorship, they say, on the part of the White House. And Zuckerberg in this letter is very clear. He uses the words pressure. He said he felt pressure from the Biden White House to censor some of the information about the COVID-19 pandemic. And he says, he expresses regret. He says he should have been more outspoken at the time. He now believes it is wrong, knowing what he now knows. And in this letter, he says, quote, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree.
Shout out to Carlton. Carlton said so many donations. The stream went to a commercial break on my end. Hey, that's that artificial intelligence. They was like, man, he getting paid. We'll go ahead and do our part with the AdSense. Oh, man. What do you guys think about this? What do you guys think about this? Now, let me ask you guys a question. Does the social media censorship sound a lot like the quote unquote proposed price gouging controls? If it does, give me a thumbs up. If it does not, then give me a thumbs down. Now, this particular situation here happened as a result of and under the Biden administration, right? Would you guys agree? If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, then give me a thumbs down. This literally happened under the Biden administration. So now here's my question. Should somebody ask the question, what's the guarantee that Kamala Harris will not extend tight controls to be able to pressure big tech and social media companies like this? Because this is dangerous. This is controlling the media for the most part, because social media is media, right? Shout out to Carla. What's good with it, Carla? Right?
Letter to the House Judiciary. House Republicans, Becky, they're already, highlighting this information, celebrating this admission on the part of Zuckerberg. The White House defending their position, a statement to CNN today saying that during that time, they believe the administration, they said, encourage responsible actions to protect public health safety. And notably, Zuckerberg says that he will be ready to push back more forcefully if this ever happens again in the future. Becky?
And Solon, he also in this letter.
So now here's the question. Here's my question for you guys. Who regulates to make sure that the United States government does not engulf, take over, and take advantage of a tech company like what happened with Facebook? Because they shouldn't be allowed to do this, right? So now here's the question. Who's to say that they don't do this with trying to keep themselves in power? How does that work?
Suggested that the FBI warned about potential Russian disinformation around Hunter Biden and the Ukrainian firm Burisma affecting the 2020 election. And that information was suppressed in some way as well. Is that what we are to understand from this?
Now, I want you guys to make sure you guys hear that. Now, mind you, why am I making sure that you guys hear that? Because it's always those people that say that people like me are giving mis or disinformation. Shout out to DeAndre. DeAndre said, however it worked, it's still Trump's fault. Facts. If you ask Plies, that's what he'll say. I don't know why you sitting there watching that CNN. You know the news don't make no damn sense, shouted. I don't understand why you listening to that. You just trying to find a reason not to vote for that woman, Kamala Harris. You know this all Trump fault. I don't understand what's wrong with y'all, shouted. Y'all not making no damn sense.
And notably, Zuckerberg says that he will be ready to push back more forcefully if this ever happens again in the future. Becky?
And Solon, he also in this letter suggested that the FBI warned about potential Russian disinformation around Hunter Biden and the Ukrainian firm Burisma affecting the 2020 election. And that information was suppressed in some way as well. Is that what we are to understand from this?
That's absolutely right, Becky. And again, this is something that House Republicans have been pushing to learn more about. He says in this letter that in the fall of 2020, his team temporarily demoted a story that was put out by the New York Post that alleged Biden family corruption. They demoted that, he says, so that it could be cleared through their own fact checkers as they were reviewing the story. And Zuckerberg in this letter says,
how does that work? I want you guys to pay very close attention. See, this is probably going to end up being kind of long because we're going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. How do you fact check with quote unquote your own fact checkers? Let me ask you guys this. Shouldn't fact checkers be a mutual third party? or somebody that has no vested interest on each side so that it can reduce the likelihood of a conflict of interest? Isn't that how that should work? So how do you have your own fact checkers? How does that work? Who are these quote unquote fact checkers? Who are they? Who are these their own fact checkers? Shout out to Jay. Jay said Rachel Maddow has competition. Facts. Yeah, DC Precise. Facts. Should.
Ukrainian firm Burisma affecting the 2020 election, and that information was suppressed in some way as well. Is that what we are to understand from this?
Now, you guys remember what happened with Burisma, Ukraine, and Hunter Biden in the 2020 election, right? If you go back and watch some of the playlists on the channel, you will see a lot of the old content covering that stuff. It's not really brought up too much nowadays, except for in passing a little bit. But if you guys recall, the New York Post Twitter account was suspended and removed off of Twitter during that time. You guys remember that? If you guys remember that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't remember that, then give me a thumbs down.
Health safety, and notably Zuckerberg says that he will be ready to push back more forcefully if this ever happens again in the future.
And suddenly, he also in this letter suggested that the FBI warned about potential Russian disinformation around Hunter Biden and the Ukrainian firm Burisma affecting the 2020 election, and that information was suppressed in some way as well. Is that what we are to understand from this?
That's absolutely right, Becky. And again, this is something that House Republicans have been pushing to learn more about. He says in this letter that in the fall of 2020, his team temporarily demoted a story that was put out by the New York Post that alleged Biden family corruption. They demoted that, he says, so that it could be cleared through their own fact checkers as they were reviewing the story. And Zuckerberg in this letter says that since then, it's been made clear to him that the reporting was not Russian disinformation. And he says in retrospect that they should not have demoted the story. So that's an important clarification. And he says that Meta has changed some policies to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But again, this just giving a lot of fuel to the fire.
Now, here's my question. How, say, for instance, the government just decides they don't really care. You know what I'm saying? They're just going to do whatever. What mechanism is there to protect Meta from the government, from government overstepping? That's my question for you guys. Let me know what you guys think about that. What is the mechanism to stop Meta from being a victim of government overreach? Let me know what you guys think.
Republicans pushing for more information, especially with the Biden family and the information that's spread over social media.
Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook's parent company, now says he regrets agreeing to requests from the Biden administration to censor content related to COVID-19.
There it is right there. I mean, again, there it is. So now here's my question. My question is, with this being said, how do we know what we can versus what we can't trust? How can we trust anything?
Information, especially with the Biden family and the information that's spread over social media.
Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook's parent company, now says he regrets agreeing to requests from the Biden administration to censor content related to COVID-19. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee,
now think about this. Why would the Biden administration reached out to Facebook privately and asked them to censor information regarding C-19? Think about that. Now, here's my question. Where's the consequences for the Biden administration? Because this is clearly unethical, but they're not bound by any ethical guidelines because they, quote unquote, make up the guidelines.
Pushing for more information, especially with the Biden family and the information that's spread over social media.
Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook's parent company, now says he regrets agreeing to requests from the Biden administration to censor content related to COVID-19. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, Zuckerberg wrote this, quote,
shout out to DSB for being a like enforcer. Make sure y'all throw some like enforcers in the chat for DSB.
2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our team for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree.
And now remember, they have somebody that works for Google who's working with Kamala Harris for the debate, and they have an active case in trial going against Google. Somebody make it make sense.
Jim Jordan, Zuckerberg wrote this, quote, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our team for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. Zuckerberg went on to say Facebook should not have temporarily demoted an article from the New York Post reporting on allegations of corruption in the Biden family in the lead up to the 2020 election. The panel's back. We're also joined by...
See that? So now what? Now, let me ask you guys this. If Kamala Harris gets hit with questions about this during a debate, what does that look like? How does that work?
Spread over social media.
Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook's parent company, now says he regrets agreeing to requests from the Biden administration to censor content related to COVID-19. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, Zuckerberg wrote this, quote, in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our team for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. I believe the government pressure was wrong.
Shout out to LC56. Make sure you guys show LC56 some love. Throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for LC56 for funding the organization. Definitely appreciate it.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
People around. I'm rich, bitch.
Cash rules everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar, dollar bill, yo.
Definitely appreciate it. This is disturbing, isn't it? I mean, how disturbing is this, y'all? For real. Shout out to everybody watching. I appreciate you guys. If you all haven't smashed that like button yet, please take a moment, smash that like button. Also, if you guys have not hit the bell, please take a moment, hit that bell. And also, please share the stream to your social media. We got 30 people watching. Shout out to y'all. We got 39 likes. Let's try to get the likes up to 70.
And I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. Zuckerberg went on to say Facebook should not have temporarily demoted an article from the New York Post reporting on allegations of corruption in the Biden family in the lead up to the 2020 election. The panel's back. We're also joined by CNN media analyst Sarah Fisher. Sarah, good morning. Wonderful to have you. Thanks for jumping in on this story. I think what Zuckerberg has done here is fascinating. It's not something we've heard from him in this kind of direct way before. What is going on here, and what does it mean for future elections or issues like this?
This is a huge deal. You'll recall Republicans from 2 states sued. They went all through a huge court battle, basically alleging that the government overreached. They lost that court case, but we never heard from Facebook. We never heard from Meta. So we didn't know how they felt about the issue. This is the first time.
Now, this government overreach case, if I'm not mistaken, this is the same case that they were talking about in regards to RFK. Yeah, and that's facts. Shout out to Mr. J. Mr. J says, Kamala is the Biden administration. Absolutely. And honestly, if you ask me, that's one of the main reasons why they have her not going to debate anybody.
Election. The panel's back. We're also joined by CNN media analyst Sarah Fisher. Sarah, good morning. Wonderful to have you. Thanks for jumping in on this story. I think what Zuckerberg has done here is fascinating. It's not something we've heard from him in this kind of direct way before. What is going on here, and what does it mean for future elections or issues like this?
This is a huge deal. You'll recall Republicans from 2 states sued. They went all through a huge court battle, basically alleging that the government overreached. They lost that court case, but we never heard from Facebook. We never heard from Meta. So we didn't know how they felt about the issue. This is the first time now. And them coming out and saying, look, this was a big deal. We don't agree with these policies. It sets a precedent moving forward that if any government official, if the White House were to pressure them again, we now know where they stand. And hopefully they now feel empowered to push back.
What are the politics behind this? I mean,
now let me ask you guys this question. What that sounds good, right? Sounds good in theory. But here's my question. What are the realistic avenues that Facebook has to be able to push back on quote unquote government oversight? What are they actually able to do about that? How can they do anything? Think about it. How would they be able to combat the federal government trying to bully them? How does anybody deal with the federal government trying to bully them? How do you do that? How do you deal with it? Most people that deal with federal government bullying, in most cases, they don't even survive to see the next day. So how would a private company like Facebook deal with something like this? It doesn't even make any sense.
Clearly, Zuckerberg is being influenced by a wide variety of factors. Sending this letter to Jim Jordan, did he feel like he had to do it? Why now?
Because ahead of the election, they're going to face a lot of content moderation issues. Even though they don't want to be involved in politics and news anymore, inevitably they are. And so if there is going to be an 11th hour issue like the New York Post story and Facebook were to make the wrong call, they want everyone in Congress, particularly Republicans, to know that their intent here is not to be picking one side, that they're doing what they think is best for the health of the platform. But if he didn't speak up about the White House pressure now, no one would have believed them then.
Mark Preston, what do you see here? If you have a question for Sarah too, I'd be interested in kind of like how you spend a lot of your time thinking about how we as a news organization here at CNN are going to cover these elections, cover politics. It can be really, really tricky. And Facebook, now Meta, was at the center of this.
God, I hate walking the center line again, but I agree with Mark Zuckerberg. No, I agree. I mean, the idea that we have to protect free speech is critical to our democracy. No question about that. We still haven't been able to handle how do we slow the disinformation so as people don't get wrong information. The government clearly didn't do it the right way, but there needs to be a way. It's just we haven't figured it out yet.
The way, by the way, is transparency. And that's what I think a lot of government officials are starting to lean into. Facebook can make all the content moderation decisions in the world. We want to know how their algorithms work and why they're making them. And then we can hold them accountable to the decision whether it's right or wrong. We didn't have a lot of those transparency measures in place. It was the 2020 election, and quite frankly, the New York Post story that has now forced a lot of tech companies to be more forthcoming around how they make these decisions.
Well, are they telling us more about their algorithm?
They are. I mean, now this algorithm is much more like TikTok. It elevates what is going viral as opposed to what your close friends and family think. And that matters, Casey, because a lot of the political content being shared on Facebook, it came from.
So you guys notice the difference between the TikTok and Facebook algorithms? That's interesting, isn't it?
Wrong information. The government clearly didn't do it the right way, but there needs to be a way. It's just we haven't figured it out yet.
The way, by the way, is transparency. And that's what I think a lot of government officials are starting to lean into. Facebook can make all the content moderation decisions in the world. We want to know how their algorithms work and why they're making them. And then we can hold them accountable to the decision whether it's right or wrong. We didn't have a lot of those transparency measures in place. It was the 2020 election, and quite frankly, the New York Post story that has now forced a lot of tech companies to be more forthcoming around how they make these decisions.
Well, are they telling us more about their algorithm?
They are. I mean, now this algorithm is much more like TikTok. It elevates what is going viral as opposed to what your close friends and family think. And
so now TikTok elevates what's viral versus what your close friends and family are watching. Isn't that interesting? Now, let me ask you guys this question, and this is a question for everybody in the chat. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Moving forward into 2025, do you see issues like this continuing more under a Harris presidency or under a Trump presidency? And let me know why.
that matters, Casey, because a lot of the political content being shared on Facebook, it came from your close friends and family. So we know that there's a reduction in political content. We know that there's a reduction in news content. And we know that it's easier for a random person to go viral very quickly. Now, that's a disinformation problem within itself. But a lot of that disinformation right now, it actually isn't mostly politics. It's a lot of disinformation around consumer harms. Things like, someone hawking a bad drug product that's not good for weight loss, but they claim that it is.
Yeah, well, we've just uncorked a whole lot of other issues.
Yeah. These are issues that have been around for a long time, but they would just call you a conspiracy theorist. They would just call you a conspiracy theorist. All right. So now there's a GOP representative who's saying that people need to be prosecuted in regards to this because this is so serious. Now, I don't know if I disagree. I think that there should definitely be some type of investigation and some type of report done. And then based on that report, I don't know if there's some ethical violations or if some crimes have been committed, then absolutely somebody should be prosecuted. But I think that this should definitely be investigated because this is something that affects all of us and we would have never known about it. How would you know other than just speculation? And then if you speculate, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Joining me now is Florida Congressman Carlos Jimenez. He's a member of the House Armed Services, Homeland Security, and China Select Committees. Congressman, I want to get your reaction to Kirby's comments. And also I want to add this, that Tulsi Gabbard, who was with former President Trump yesterday in Arlington, said the Harris-Biden administration has us embroiled in multiple wars around the world and closer to nuclear war now than ever before. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace.
No, she's absolutely right. And it's because of the weakness of the Biden-Harris administration. That's the reason why the world is aflame today. And we face other threats, too. China has also posed a significant threat to Taiwan. Look, if President Trump wins in November, that intervening, 90 days is going to be a very, very trying time for the United States, because our enemies are going to know that that's the time to strike while Biden and Harris are still in the White House. And so, yeah, she's absolutely correct. And for Kirby to say that, Biden is totally, connected. I mean, come on. I mean, do you really believe that? I mean, after that debate performance, after you've seen Joe Biden, how crippled he really is, that he's really connected and he's making the decisions. I don't buy that for a second.
Well, then who is it? Lloyd Austin?
Now, who's making the decisions? This is a good question, and I think this is interesting. They say that based on Biden's debate performance and based on how we've seen him perform, just quote unquote, as a human being since he's been in office, to them, they're saying it's clear he must not be running the country because he can't even run in a straight line. So who do you all think is the person or group of people who are making the most influential decisions behind the scenes that Biden is the face for? Let me know what you guys think.
Is it
It's
Jake
somebody inside the
Sullivan?
White House.
Who's-
Yeah, somebody-
Jake Sullivan's in China, but who's leading this then? If it's not Biden,
I would think that somebody there's a couple of people inside the White House are really calling the shots, and that's what's happening. And Joe Biden's in California having a pretty good time. I don't think he's connected at all. To be honest with you, I don't think he has the capacity to be connected at all at this time. And then Harris is even worse. I mean, I don't think she's calling the shots either. And I'm glad she's not calling the shots. And maybe some professionals inside the White House are calling the shots, but I doubt that either Biden or Harris are calling the shots right now.
all right. Well, let's talk about the border crisis. Americans are living near the border in Texas and Arizona, and they're now talking with Fox Digital on Vice President Harris's record as well. Borders are. Watch what they're telling us.
If they get in there, she won't do anything. It's not going to change. It's going to get worse.
Okay, so there's no gates. Everything's literally open. People just come across, wait to get picked up, and get sent along somewhere in the U.S.
Fire and get a new one. She's not doing a good job, or she's not putting her time where she needs to be at right now.
It's non-existent. So from a scale of 0 to 10, I would give her a 0.
And I want to add this. In Aurora, Colorado, it's a small town. They're being infiltrated by members of that violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, thanks to nearby Denver's sanctuary city status. These gang members reportedly are taking over multiple apartment complexes, and they're driving up crime in that area. Congressman.
Now, shout out to people that are subscribed to Undocumented. If you're not subscribed to Undocumented, make sure you guys subscribe to that channel. Shout out to one of the mods. If one of the mods could put the link in to the most recent live stream that we did on Undocumented, we actually covered this particular situation right here. So you could check that out for some background information on this situation that went on in Denver. These are all things that have gotten worse or are occurring under the Biden administration. And these are all things that, if you ask me, if Kamala Harris is confronted with having to deal with these issues during a debate, she's going to have a very difficult time working around those. She's going to have a very difficult time working around those.
She's not putting her time where she needs to be at right now.
It's non-existent. So from a scale of 0 to 10, I would give her a 0.
And I want to add this. In Aurora, Colorado, it's a small town. They're being infiltrated by members of that violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, thanks to nearby Denver's sanctuary city status. These gang members reportedly are taking over multiple apartment complexes, and they're driving up crime in that area. Congressman, you are an immigrant. You have followed this story from the beginning. You were very closely involved in trying to secure the border. Your thoughts on what we're hearing now?
I mean, look, it's, Kamala Harris says she's going to fix the border if she becomes president. She created the border crisis. This mess is her mess. And so now she's trying to convince us that she's going to fix it, as if somehow the last 3.5 years, they disappeared. It was Trump, and then now.
Shout out to DeAndre. Shout out to Brooklyn Queen. Make sure you guys hit those links that Brooklyn Queen and DeAndre put in the chat and subscribe to that channel over there.
Now after is her. It's ludicrous. And so, look, not only is Tren de Aragua over there in Colorado, it's over here in Miami. A couple of gang members picked up a former Venezuelan police officer, abducted him, and then killed him. So they're here right now in my community too. And so they're all over the place. And so when you're allowing gang members to come into the United States, crime has nowhere to go but up, which is what's happening all around the country. And it's all due to Kamala Harris. It's all due to the Biden and Harris administration's actually on purpose policy of allowing tens of millions of people into the United States. We also have a couple of million gotaways. We don't even know who they are and where they are. And yeah, it's a huge problem. That's why Christopher Wray said, we're facing probably one of the most dangerous times in American history now due to what's happening at the border.
Well, and Harris and the Harris campaign in particular know that their weakness is immigration. So we'll see how they're going to attempt to turn that around. I do want to move on to some big news of the day here. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg is now admitting that the Biden-Harris administration pressured his company to censor Americans, specifically regarding COVID-19 related content.
Now, let me ask you guys this. How many people do you all know of who have lost their platform or who have been deemed as conspiracy theorists or misinformation people as a result of smearing because of C19? And also, if you're interested in C19 information, make sure that you guys are subscribed to the BLR C19 channel. So I know I've been working the mods over, but that's why I added a bunch of wrenches. You know what I'm saying? If everybody can't, you know what I'm saying? I appreciate y'all staying on it too, but that's to all the old mods, you know what I'm saying? Like y'all got some new mods to help. So, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to y'all. But if one of the mods could put the link in to the C19 channel, the BLR C19 channel, make sure that you're subscribed to that channel as well. That channel has been tracking C19 since it first took place, and only one video was removed from there by YouTube. So make sure you guys check that channel out. And I'm going to be posting more content on there eventually. So just make sure that you're up to date.
He also says he regrets censoring content related to the Hunter Biden laptop story, which, remember, government agencies initially labeled.
Shout out to Brooklyn Queen and DeAndre. They on it. Throw some like forces in the chat for Brooklyn Queen and DeAndre. They on it. Definitely appreciate it. Make sure y'all hit those links that they put in.
Russian disinformation. He says the company is going to push back now if something like this happens again. Congressman, your reaction, and we should say that also he is making about a dozen employees available now. This is from the investigation from Jim Jordan, his committee. What do you want to see happen next year with this story?
I want to see some people prosecuted for violating the Constitution of the United States. The First Amendment says that the government will not be involved in abridging your freedom of speech, and that's exactly what they did by pressuring Zuckerberg.
Shout out to Jay Bird. What's good with it, bro?
They violated the First Amendment of the Constitution, and so what's going to happen to those that did that? Probably nothing, because it takes a DOJ to prosecute that, but it's obviously against the law for the government to be involved in trying to censor anything. Yeah, I hope that it all comes out. We knew what was happening 4 years ago. We've known for years that this has been going on, and now Zuckerberg has actually admitted to it. It's not just Facebook; it's all digital media and probably media in general. But you know what? The media is in the Democrats' pocket, and so let's see how much of this actually comes out on other news outlets.
Yeah, I gotta agree. How many of you all agree that the media is in the quote unquote Democrats' pockets? If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down. And shout out to OG channel member Jay Bird. Make sure you guys show Jay Bird some love. Throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for my man Jay Bird, standing on business.
I'm standing on business. I'm standing on business. I'm standing on business. How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
Definitely appreciate it, bro.
Like MSNBC or CNN, what Zuckerberg is saying right now, I doubt that you're going to see much of it. They're going to try to shield the American public from the truth. We've known the truth for a very, very long time.
Well, look, he told, and this is even back in 2021, Zuckerberg said it was senior officials from the Biden administration and the White House. And he said they repeatedly pressured him and his team for months over the censorship. So we need names.
That's against the law.
I would like to know the names. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is important. We need to figure this out. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think we'll ever get the answers, though.
Yeah, well, it's all come from it comes from the DNC. It comes from the Biden-Harris administration. They've been involved in censorship, for a long, long time, and it's against the law. The government is not supposed to be involved in trying to somehow, subvert your freedom of speech or freedom of thought. And our government has been involved in that for a very, very long time, at least during this Biden-Harris administration, and they're going to continue to do it. And I'm just happy that Zuckerberg finally fessed up to it. But believe me, we knew what was going on. We know what's been going on for the entirety of this administration, and it's wrong and it's illegal.
Congressman Carlos Jimenez, Congressman, thank you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And again, what would they have called you if this was last year? If this was last year, what would they have said? What would they have called you? Shout out to my man Jay Bird. I appreciate you, bro. This is like, to me, this is wild. What's crazy about this is that, like, all of these reasons that are very legitimate reasons that are very easy to explain are coming out that show logical, legitimate reasons why people might have doubts with these administrations or with these presidential candidates, especially on the Democrat side. And what people are doing is just shaming people into saying, well, just go ahead and vote for him anyway. None of this stuff is even being addressed. Listen to this.
The big news came out yesterday from the Facebook Meta CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, saying that at the height of the pandemic, he said his company was pressured by the Biden administration over the COVID-19 type of content that was going out there. Some felt that it was misinformation.
You see that? Shout out to DeAndre. If you guys agree with DeAndre, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't agree with DeAndre, then give me a thumbs down. DeAndre said, it's crazy that this story is just another story. This should be all over the headlines. Bro, I am with you 100%. If you guys agree with DeAndre, give me a thumbs up in the chat. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. I agree 100%.
The big news came out yesterday from the Facebook Meta CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, saying that at the height of the pandemic, he said his company was pressured by the Biden administration over the COVID-19 type of content that was going out there. Some felt that it was misinformation, but saying that he felt very cornered in a way that no CEO should feel here. So I want to bring in Fox News' Griff Jenkins, who has been following this story and joins us more with this big revelation that came out.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, good afternoon. And look, let's not lose sight of the fact that it's just not every day that one of the most powerful CEOs in the world just comes out and admits publicly that he was wrong. And that's exactly what Zuckerberg did. Now, he did it in a letter to the House Judiciary Committee. Here's the key paragraph, writing this. In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Mr. J. Mr. J says this should take Kamala out of the game. If you guys agree, throw some flames in the chat for Mr. J. I agree. What's interesting about it, though, is that like all the people that are coming out saying all this crazy stuff, right? Like the Plies, the Steve Harveys, all of these guys. What do you think about this? My question is, like, you know what I mean? Like, what's your stance on this? How do you feel about this? How are we just going to ignore this? You know what I mean?
He continues, I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. Zuckerberg added he's prepared now to push back if something like this happens again. Now, the White House reacted to the news, and they may have been a bit caught off guard of this coming out. They said this in a statement today, quote, when confronted with a deadly pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions to protect public health and safety. Our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present.
Now, what I see here, what all this translates to me is take away the person's right to know, and you filter what they get and versus what they don't get. You could when I listen to this, all I hear is information flow control. That's what I hear. Information flow control. If you guys agree that that's what this is, then give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree and you don't think that that's what this is, then give me a thumbs down. But let me know what you guys think that it is. And shout out to everybody watching. I really appreciate you guys. If you all haven't smashed the like button yet, please do me a favor. Take a moment, smash that like button. Also, if you guys haven't hit the bell, please take a moment, hit that bell. And also, please share the stream to your social media. We got 26 people watching. Shout out to y'all. I really appreciate you guys being here. And we got 42 likes. If everybody could bang on that like button and get us to 60, that'd be wonderful.
Notice there, Mike, that the White House did not directly address Zuckerberg's biggest admission in that letter that the Biden-Harris administration pressured his teams. Then, in the same letter, Zuckerberg separately admits that his company was wrong when they, quote, demoted the Hunter Biden laptop story, which has now obviously been proven not to be Russian disinformation. And to be clear, it wasn't the White House, it was the FBI.
So now what else If the Hunter Biden story has been proven to not be mis or disinformation, then we got to ask the next obvious question, the next logical question. The next logical question is, well, what else isn't mis or disinformation that's been deemed as mis or disinformation because somebody didn't like how it sounded?
That sent them down that road, but really a lot in one letter from Zuckerberg. And one final thing he put in there at the end is that we're gone are the Zuckerbugs, as they were known. He says, in an effort to maintain neutral and be transparent about it, he will not be making any campaign donations this election cycle. So a lot of news. I've tried to talk, Mike, to some sources, with Facebook, with Meta, about why now? What about the timing? And they said they're letting that letter just sort of stand on its own, but noting that it was, this House investigation by the Judiciary Committee into all of this that sort of prompted it. But one thing is for sure, it's going to be talked a lot about. You're already hearing this conversation shift to guys like Michael Schellenberger, who you may recall was testifying last year before Congress about government censorship on social media platforms. He says he thinks this is just the beginning of a reckoning of the government in too powerful, if you will, tech companies. Mike?
It's also amazing to look back at it because we vividly remember the pandemic and seeing information there that was tagged misinformation. And then you see years later that probably wasn't the case at all. I think a lot of people, Griff, are wondering, okay, this is great. Zuckerberg is putting this out there now, but where was the backbone back in 2020 and 2021?
Absolutely. And not only are they wondering, why it happened back then, but you have people like Representative Laurel Lee, who is a member of that Judiciary Committee. She says that some of that actual data would have benefited the public had we had those opposing viewpoints and data points and information that was, we now know, likely censored by Facebook.
I gotta agree. You have to have all the information. If you ask me, it's imperative, it's important. You have to have all the information. You know what I'm saying? Like this for whatever reason, you know what I'm saying? This it's not rocket science. You got to have all the info. They should not be out here on a jihad trying to stop people from having access to this information so that people can do their own personal research. But what it is that they were invested in a certain thing, invested in a certain narrative, and stood to gain or lose from certain products. So they wanted to make sure that they controlled all the information around it. And if they controlled all the information around it, then they could basically control everybody's limited understanding of what was going on. And that's what they did. Even if it's wrong. And there's no check and balance to stop them from doing it.
So, who knows how it might have positively helped us had this effort not been underway. And then, by the way, if you didn't already see it, Team Trump seizing on it. Not only did Trump take to his Truth Social, but you had J.D. Vance at an event here in Michigan just a few hours ago, picking up on it on our own Aisha Hosni, that, look, it's clear now that these CEOs and the government collusion here, they're far too powerful in influencing the nation's information, and something's got to be done about it. What that means, we don't know, but I think you're going to hear a lot more about it on the campaign trail.
Shout out to Jay. Jay says the guy on the right looks like the penguin from Batman. That's hilarious. Y'all agree? If y'all agree with Jay, put some penguins in the chat. Throw some penguin emojis in the chat if y'all agree.
Yeah, so true. And I think that you were just right on when you were trying to ask the teams there about, what is the timing all around this, where we're just going now almost into the fall months here, heading into this major election. And it seemed like this Zuckerberg letter just sort of dropped out of thin air.
Yeah, and, it doesn't, on the face of it, look political.
Shout out to Black Free Thinker. Black Free Thinker said, I just had to hit the Discord because of Plies. Let me see what you threw in there. Did Plies say some more stuff? Is he out here acting a fool again? Oh, wow. I'm looking at this. Shout out to Two Factor. I'm going to have to make a video of this. Shout out to Two Factor. Man, that's crazy. Hold on. I'm going to run this real quick, y'all.
Call that, here is Zuckerberg being investigated. So he's clearing the air. And there was certainly a sense in the letter that tone of the letter that Zuckerberg is saying, look, in hindsight, we probably wouldn't have made some decisions had we, known how the story would end. But as you point out in the intro, this all was going down at the height of the COVID pandemic. And so I think there's the question of like, why now? But also perhaps it just was the nearing of the end of this House investigation. And Zuckerberg said, look, I just want to put it on paper and bare my soul and get it behind me.
Yeah, so true. Griff Jenkins, thanks so much for giving us the updates here on this big story.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Some wild stuff going on. So we're gonna take another listen. We're gonna look at all of this stuff because, man, we're gonna take a look at that Google case too. We're gonna take a look at that Google case too because I'm telling you, we're moving in the direction of a technocracy, autocracy, like. It's just getting wild. Shout out to Carla. Carla said, we used to have books of right to know at work. They kept taking the protective abilities away from organizations like OSHA that protected the workers and the public. So now we don't have a right to know. Yeah, absolutely. Listen here, shawty. You can vote for, I don't care which K you vote for. You can vote for AKA or the KKK. Shawty, it don't matter which one to me. To me, it makes sense which one to vote for. I don't understand why you want to vote for a rich white man. Don't make no sense. I don't get it, shawty. Oh, man.
A new controversy unfolding this morning, and it involves a war of words between a tech titan and the White House.
Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg claiming that he was pressured by the White House to censor content related to the COVID-19 pandemic. A White House official releasing a statement in response to the claims, not completely denying them, instead standing by its position at the time. A lot to talk about. ABC's Aaron Katursky joining us here now. So what exactly is all of this about?
This is about a broader conversation between big tech and government about social media content and how it should be policed. And for a long time, Facebook has faced criticism that it was silencing voices that went against the medical orthodoxy, especially about the origin of the COVID-19 virus. And Mark Zuckerberg is effectively conceding now that that criticism may have something to it. In a statement, he says, I believe the government pressure was wrong. And
there you go. Notice how, we don't notice. We're when we're, just looking at things, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. All we can do is speculate. And if we speculate too loud and bring too much attention to it, you get called a conspiracy theorist. Notice how when something gets revealed, though, there's never any correction on calling a person a conspiracy theorist. There's never a correction on that. You guys ever notice that? Why is that? Why is there never a correction when you notice something and a conspiracy theory turns out to be real? How does that work?
Virus. And Mark Zuckerberg is effectively conceding now that that criticism may have something to it. In a statement, he says, I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it, effectively saying that he did bow to pressure from the Biden administration to silence criticism or silence these theories that the virus was somehow man-made.
Now, should Kamala Harris have to answer questions about being part of the Biden administration and being part of doing this to Facebook during a debate? Should Kamala Harris have to answer for this is my question for you guys. I think she should. I don't think she'll be able to. I don't think she will. I think she'll try to dodge the question. But I absolutely believe that she should definitely be confronted with this.
Have something to it. In a statement, he says, I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it, effectively saying that he did bow to pressure from the Biden administration to silence criticism or silence these theories that the virus was somehow man-made. I feel strongly, Zuckerberg's statement continues, that we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. Now, the White House said in its own statement to ABC News this morning that its position has been clear and consistent.
Shout out to Tedra. Tedra says the lobbying team includes top congressional aide John Branscombe, who was hired in September of 2021 to help the company fend off threats from Democratic lawmakers and the Biden administration. So Facebook's been under attack, seems like, for a very long time. They've been under attack for a long time.
We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the...
Now, I want you guys to pay very close attention to how the government addresses this. There is no provision for personal autonomy in the way that this is addressed. There is no provision for the people of the United States being able to have the information and do with it how they would do with it naturally without any outside intervention. There's no provision for autonomy. So why am I saying that? Why is that important? How many people want to live in a government with tight personal controls where there's very little autonomy, and there's very little autonomy under the guise of we're doing this for you because we care so much? Because that's what this is.
News this morning that its position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information that they present. And this is not just about COVID-19. This involves the Hunter Biden laptop controversy. This involves donations that Mark Zuckerberg's wife made during the 2020 election. Zuckerberg says he believes that Meta should now be neutral, so he's going to pull back donations, and he says he's changed some policies and practices to make sure that he does not bow to pressure in any political direction.
I mean, it's so interesting that they're not monitored the way we were. Our industry 20 years ago was very much what social media is now. We were under strict controls in the news business in a way that social media just isn't.
It isn't. And in fact, social media companies say that it's not really up to them to invade on anybody's free speech. But implicit in Zuckerberg's statement is that they have the power to police their content. They know what's being said, and they have the power to take it back if it violates their protocols, and they have the power to let it go unvarnished.
That's a lot of power.
It is a ton of power, and there's a debate whether it needs to be regulated.
Well, and especially when a lot of this conversation is being driven by the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Jim Jordan, who has been very outspoken about conservative voices, in his view, being silenced online. We're 70 days out to the election. What is the level of concern, not only from the government standpoint, Congress as well, but also these tech companies themselves, that what people are viewing and seeing and having access to as we head into a very important election may not be accurate?
There's a lot of concern that what people are viewing is not accurate. The influence of AI, the influence of the social media companies' political views themselves. Facebook here says it wants to be neutral, but neutral in and of itself is its own problem. So the best advice that people have is to make sure you give a little scrutiny to what you're seeing on your feed, and realize that it may not necessarily be exactly what it claims to be.
What does this say about the power and influence that big tech has on this country? I mean, we're talking about free speech here, but how much free speech should be allowed? I mean, is there some kind of policing that needs to be in place?
And now that's my question for you guys. What do you all think about that? Because I think that's where a lot of the breakdown ends up happening, is that people have different ideas of quote unquote free speech, different ideas of quote unquote how free speech should be regulated, if it should be regulated, and if it's regulated at all, then I mean, I don't think it's free speech. Free means unrestricted. So if there's any type of regulation or restriction, then it clearly changes the condition from free to not free, right? So there's that. There's all the semantics.
And Trillian, that was President Biden's point during the pandemic, that he said that misinformation about the pandemic was literally killing people.
Right.
And that's why
There's
wanted
statistics behind that.
How do they know? C-19 was still in the discovery phase at that time. So a lot of stuff that might have been deemed misinformation, I don't even think that there was enough supporting information for people to understand exactly what was going on at that time. You know what I mean?
And that proved that at the time.
That's right. And that's why he said social media companies had a responsibility. Conservative critics like Jim Jordan said that there should have been more of a discussion about masking, about the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic, about all those criticisms that we've heard, and that social media didn't allow for it. On the political side, social media has a lot of power, but they also they get zapped by the Russians, by the Chinese, by the Iranians who want to sow disinformation, and how much of that is on the shoulders of the social media companies.
Because I think part of the conversation we're wrapping up, because I know we have some other stories to get to, but I think
it's such a good conversation.
But the conversation is that, you know, Facebook and X and all of these other platforms are just that. They're platforms, whereas ABC News is an organization with people vetting information, sending it out through different sourcing. Facebook is an opportunity for anyone who has an account to get on and spread information. So there's a market difference
there for sure.
Yeah.
So there's that. Very interesting. Shout out to my man KO Kid Fit. What's good with it, bro? KO Kid Fit says, I agree, Mr. J. Her, Biden, and everyone else flooding the cities with illegals too. Yeah, bro, facts. And I was just telling them about that stream that we had did on Undocumented about that apartment complex in Colorado. Let me see something. Hold on real quick. Let me see. I think we saw this already. Give me 1 second. Real quick, if you guys haven't smashed the like button, take a moment, smash that like button. Also, if you guys haven't hit the bell, please take a moment to hit the bell. I think we saw this. It won't hurt to look at it again. It won't hurt to look at it again. Let me see. I want to see how Kamala Harris deals with answering questions about this during the debate. That's what I want to see.
Welcome back to America Decides. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg says he will resist attempts from the White House to censor content on his social media platforms. Here's the key phrase, moving forward. This after previously being influenced by U.S. government officials. Tech billionaire submitted.
So this is a thorough expose, if you ask me, of the United States government. This is a thorough expose of the United States government. No longer can they call us conspiracy theorists. No longer can they sit there and say, well, this stuff doesn't happen. They can't do any of that anymore. Because now we're seeing it in real time. We're seeing this actually happens. This is, it's done. Somebody make it make sense.
Submitted a letter to the House Judiciary Committee chairman, that's Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, saying he now regrets having bowed to what he called pressure. That's a direct quote from the Biden.
So now, is it a fair question to ask Kamala Harris, what's to say that if you get into office, that something like this won't happen again? That's my question for you guys. If we don't like what you're saying, if we don't like what you're doing, we'll just use all of our power that we have to quote unquote make you go away.
Welcome back to America Decides. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg says he will resist attempts from the White House to censor content on his social media platforms. Here's the key phrase, moving forward. This after previously being influenced by U.S. government officials. Tech billionaire submitted a letter to the House Judiciary Committee chairman, that's Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, saying he now regrets having bowed to what he called pressure, that's a direct quote from the Biden administration, to remove certain content, including posts related to COVID-19 and Hunter Biden. If not remove, at least put lower on the platform. His company, Meta, owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. The White House said in response.
So now I want to ask you guys this. Should there be some type of criminal punishment for this? If you ask me, everybody involved in this should be criminally punished. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, they should be criminally punished. The United States government, the people that were involved, they should be criminally punished. Literally everyone who had a hand in this should be punished. The fact that they're doing this and all that's going to happen about it is a news story and we'll just move on to the next day like nothing happened, that in itself is problematic. That in itself encourages this kind of thing to continue happening with no correction. If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down.
Response: we believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present. For more on this, let's bring in Jolene Kent. Jolene, that's a pretty benign or anodyne statement from the White House. Many people will look at what Mark Zuckerberg has now said to the House Judiciary Committee and say, hey, wait a minute, what happened and why isn't there more outcry?
Yeah, this is interesting because the letter was not published or shared by Mark Zuckerberg or Meta itself. Instead, it was shared by the GOP leadership of the House Judiciary Committee. And
now, why is that? Why was this stuff not made public? I think that it's wild that all of the people who have issues with the direction that people are voting in, none of them are even taking any of this stuff into consideration. They're not even taking this stuff into consideration. Yeah, I agree 110%, bro. If you guys agree with Black Free Thinker, throw some flames in the chat. Black Free Thinker says, I'm really starting to despise the right at this time. They so overuse the term Marxist that a president of the United States candidate can literally speak of CCP-inspired price controls, and it just goes over. The right has called wolf for a long. The right has they cried wolf for a long time, and I gotta agree. Shout out to Shaka. Both parties are the same. Facts. This is the result of crying wolf forever. And now we have an actual situation where there's actual socialism and communism right in people's face. And because, you know what I'm saying, the woke right? The woke right has been using these terms frivolously, recklessly, and carelessly for so long, people are just ignoring it. And it's actually indeed a problem now. So they have their own burden to bear in the contribution to that. You know what I'm saying?
what the standout quote really is about what Mark Zuckerberg said happened during the pandemic. And he says, I believe the government pressure was wrong. He says that there were senior officials from the Biden administration that repeatedly pressured Meta to suppress this information about COVID-19 on its platform. He says that I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. And he added that Meta will not be bowing to pressure.
I agree 100%. Shout out to Shaka. Shaka says terms and words will always get bastardized. Absolutely. 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 And they'll get weaponized too. First they'll get bastardized, then they'll get weaponized, and then they'll recycle. You know what I'm saying?
Pressure going forward, and that he is ready to push back if something like this happens again. Facebook, Meta is no longer putting out any additional comment from this letter, but we do know that this comes after a House Judiciary investigation into the levels of censorship and expression that are allowed on social media platforms, not just Meta platforms, across the board. This letter was addressed to Republican Representative Jim Jordan on that front, but certainly Mark Zuckerberg tying up the letter made it in a really interesting way. He says in past cycles, he's given money for electoral infrastructure in a nonpartisan way, given millions of dollars to donate to make voting more accessible for people. He says he will not be doing that again this cycle. He wants to maintain a neutral stance. He does not plan to endorse a presidential candidate. He did not endorse 4 years ago, and he doesn't want to give the appearance of anything but neutral as Meta, Facebook, Instagram try to navigate the waters ahead. Only 69 days to go, Major.
And Jolene, just for the audience's benefit and as a reminder, when you agree to terms of service on any social media platform, you give that platform the right to make decisions of this kind, do you not?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What do you guys think? Uh-oh.
Jolene, just for the audience's benefit and as a reminder, when you agree to terms of service on any social media platform, you give that platform the right to make decisions of this kind, do you not?
Well, it depends on what the agreements are. Terms of service for individuals like you and I and people who are watching are different than the agreements that are struck by publishers, say the New York Post. Of course, that the article in question that was addressed in Zuckerberg's letter today was about Hunter Biden's laptop. There was an FBI warning that it might be Russian disinformation, and it turns out it was not. Zuckerberg says that he wishes he had not waited on the fact checkers and he would have just essentially left the story alone. And so these kind of agreements are all different in nature. And what Meta and what Facebook and Instagram have tried to do lately is try to get out of the business of politics, but what's really protecting them, of course, is Section 230, that very important regulation that allows them not to be responsible for the content that's being shared on their platforms. And that's something that so many lawmakers in Washington on both sides of the aisle would like to see amended going forward. That Section 230 is really what could change the game in a lot of these debates when it comes to quote unquote censorship, demoting, downgrading content, or featuring it and putting it more prominently in the algorithm for you to see, Major.
Keywords, prominently in the algorithm. Jolene Kent, thank you.
So yeah, so there's that, prominently in the algorithm, right? Which is what we're trying to do. So that's why y'all got to smash that like button. So let me see. As far as that goes, let me see. I had a couple other things, but I don't think we necessarily need to watch them. Let me see something. Yeah, this is just wild, man. So now, again, this is going on as a part of the Biden administration, right? And my question is, what's going to happen as far as Kamala Harris goes? How is she going to handle questions about this particular situation in the debate? There's no getting away from it. What about all the social media critics? Everybody who's mad at everybody who's not just on the Democrats' side. What's their idea for this? How do they feel that this should get dealt with? This is ridiculous, man. You know what I'm saying? This is really ridiculous. If you ask me, this right here is almost enough evidence to show that you don't even really need, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what kind of support you would want the Democrats to have. This is an abuse of power. You know what I'm saying? By the party that accuses everybody else of abusing their power.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. What we have for you today is a show and we're about to get to it. Hi, Jessica. Thanks for joining me.
You're really setting up realistic expectations, Robbie.
We're all about realistic expectations here at Rising. All right, let's get right to it. This is a story that I found particularly interesting, Jessica. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden administration repeatedly pressured Meta to censor content, including information about Hunter Biden, and Zuck admitted that he also regrets complying with these demands.
So again, my question is, like, how is it that they're not even forced to come out and do like some type of press conference or something to just address this? Shout out to Carla and shout out to Brooklyn Queen for being like enforcers or being bot enforcers. Make sure y'all throw some flames in the chat for them. Definitely appreciate it. Like, to me, this is just bizarre. And the fact that, like, this is so important, man. This is so important. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the stuff that RFK had to deal with. As many people are on social media and we ask these kind of crazy questions about funny growth patterns that we see as far as like our content not being moved around and different things like that, you would think that this would be the #1 story, but it's not. It's not. Nobody really even cares about this, which is bizarre. It's wild.
Fascinating. Zuckerberg has provided the House Judiciary Committee with thousands of documents as part of its investigation into content moderation online. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee chairman, Representative Jim Jordan, Zuck writes, quote, "The FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on Joe Biden's family."
So now here's the question for you guys. Is what the FBI said, did the FBI give true information to Meta, or did they gaslight Meta? Did Meta get good information, true information, or did they get gaslit? Let me know what you guys think.
Including information about Hunter Biden, and Zuck admitted that he also regrets complying with these demands. Fascinating. Zuckerberg has provided the House Judiciary Committee with thousands of documents as part of its investigation into content moderation online. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee chairman, Representative Jim Jordan, Zuck writes, quote, "The FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it." For context, the New York Post first reported the Hunter Biden laptop story, which mainstream media initially claimed was disinformation. Zuck goes on to write.
How many people remember that? So now we gotta ask, when it comes to a lot of these other stories, if they've done this once and we've trusted them, or they've been implied to have trust this entire time, then immediately when this happens, we need to start questioning the integrity of these institutions. The integrity of these institutions got to be questioned. Well, if they did this once, then what's to say that XYZ hasn't been doing this the entire time? You know what I'm saying?
Right. In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration
now,
with our teams when
Robbie
we
is sitting
agree.
up here being phony because the Hill was very compliant, and Kim Iverson at that time had to separate from the Hill as a result of this, because they didn't like Kim Iverson's takes on C-19, and they didn't like how Kim Iverson wanted to come at Dr. Fauci. How many people remember that from back in the day? So you complied as well. The Hill in particular complied with this. That's one of the reasons why Kim Iverson ain't there no more. The Hill always complies when they get threatened with some censorship. They complied for Kim Iverson. They complied with Breonna Joy Gray. Shout out to Deneen and shout out to Black Bitcoin Key. What's good with y'all? Okay.
I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. I also think we made some choices that we wouldn't make today. He then says he regrets demoting the Hunter Biden laptop story. Meta no longer temporarily demotes things in the U.S. while waiting for the independent fact checkers.
Now, an account associated with the House Judiciary Committee reacted on X, writing, quote, "Mark Zuckerberg just admitted 3 things. 1, Biden-Harris administration pressured Facebook to censor Americans. 2, Facebook censored Americans. 3, Facebook throttled the Hunter Biden laptop story. Big win for free speech. Elon Musk."
Now, let me ask you guys this question here. How should this affect the election moving forward? Because if you ask me, if multiple people have said this, right, on both sides, right? Remember Charlemagne the God, he said a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris, right? Remember Charlemagne said that? So if you vote for Kamala Harris, are you voting for more of this for the next 4 years? That's my question. Let me know what you guys think.
Early demotes things in the U.S. while waiting for the independent fact checkers.
Now, an account associated with the House Judiciary Committee.
Right. Shout out to Tedra. Tedra said they sound so enthusiastic. They're trying to bore y'all to death. Throw some Z's in the chat.
Committee reacted on X, writing, quote, "Mark Zuckerberg just admitted 3 things. 1, Biden-Harris administration pressured Facebook to censor Americans. 2, Facebook censored Americans. 3, Facebook."
Right. Shout out to Deneen. Deneen said it's interesting how the Hill never loses subscribers. Even after losing Kim and Bree, they stay steady at 1.9 million. The Hill better be careful before Crystal Ball try to pick up Kim and Bree. She better be careful, you know what I'm saying, before Crystal Ball try to pick them up.
Throttled the Hunter Biden laptop story. Big win for free speech. Elon Musk wrote on X, quote, Sounds like a First Amendment violation. Entrepreneur and podcaster Patrick Bet David wrote, quote, Mark Zuckerberg just admitted to working with the Biden-Harris administration to censor Americans.
Now, I'm not a big fan of valuetainment on none of these folks, but they're telling the truth, though. I mean, in this particular situation on this is right. This is right. Why do you think that is overwhelmingly one side of politics, one side of the political party that tends to address these kind of things? And I got to agree with Deneen. If you guys agree with Deneen, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down. This isn't shocking information. Facts. There will be more of this with a Harris administration.
He either admitted to this because, one, he's being honorable, two, he's done with the Democratic Party, three, he's getting ahead of a whistleblower. Either way, this is a very hard letter to write. Reacting to the letter, the White House said in a statement, quote, when confronted with a deadly pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions to protect public health and safety. Our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present. So, Robbie, we covered a story here on Rising about the United States actually pushing vaccine disinformation about the Chinese manufactured virus while at home censoring any misinformation on our online platforms.
So again, like, I want you guys to pay very close attention. Like, all of the stuff that the United States tends to accuse other people of, it seems like we're doing it already right now on our own. We are very guilty of a lot of the things that we accuse others of, as far as in terms of the United States. Okay.
Pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions to protect public health and safety. Our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present. So, Robbie, we covered a story here on Rising about the United States actually pushing vaccine disinformation about the Chinese manufactured virus while at home censoring any misinformation on our online platforms. It just feels like a double standard.
100%. I'm so grateful to Mark Zuckerberg for writing this very frank letter detailing how Facebook, Instagram faced this pressure.
Shout out to Deneen. Throw some Z's in the chat for Deneen. Throw some Z's in the chat. They'll put you to sleep. They'll put you to sleep. That's hilarious.
From the federal government, and he says they caved to this pressure and he regrets doing it. I think I encourage everyone to go read this letter. I think it's very thoughtful and heartfelt. He says, look, they came to us, they said, do this and this and that, and we were uncomfortable with some of it, but we eventually went along with it, and that was a big mistake because what they were saying has not stood up to the test of time on the COVID front and on the Hunter Biden front. He says that, you know, taking demoting that story while the fact checkers did their work was absolutely the wrong call. They don't do that anymore. They would not make that call again. He said the COVID stuff was too heavy-handed. You know, he's saying that it's real, the pressure campaign from the federal government.
Now, here's the thing. When are we going to get? So we know that Mark Zuckerberg is alleging, he's claiming, Mark Zuckerberg claims, right? He claims that he's not going to do this no more. And that's cool, right? That's cool. We don't know if that's true or not, but that's cool, though. Where's the guarantee that we'll get that the United States government won't do this anymore? The United States government, no, they don't have any business doing this. So where's our guarantee at that the United States government is not going to do this anymore? I think there's two ways that you can make sure that the United States government doesn't do this anymore. Hold them to a standard. And by holding them to the standard, not putting the same administration in the upcoming election. If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down.
Was real, exactly what we've covered on the show so exhaustively, you know, what the Twitter files and my own work on the Facebook files revealed is that social media moderators faced incredible pressure from the federal government and were uncomfortable. They didn't always agree. They didn't think the federal government was right about a lot of these topics of identifying accounts as bots. They had evidence. The Twitter moderators had evidence that these weren't even bots in a different situation, but they went along with it because the pressure was too great. Yes, I think that ought to be.
Shout out to Deneen. Deneen says the damage is already done. The Supreme Court says the government can censor. So now here is my question for everybody watching. This is extremely important. How do you combat government censorship? How do you combat government censorship? That's my question for you guys. Shout out to everybody that's watching. I really appreciate you guys. If you all haven't smashed the like button yet, please take a moment. Smash that like button. We got 30 people watching and we got 49 likes. Let's try to get it to 70. All right. If you guys haven't shared the stream to your social media, take a moment, share the stream to your social media. And if you're not subscribed and you're watching, take a moment, hit that bell icon twice, subscribe to the channel, and join the Discord.
Ruled to have violated the First Amendment. The Supreme Court didn't see it that way, or because of a standing issue in the case. There might have to be another Supreme Court case. Maybe they would decide differently. But, you know, Mark Zuckerberg comes in for a lot of, in the past, has come in for a lot of criticism, honestly, from Democrats and Republicans, but particularly for people on the right who have vilified him tremendously over the years. You know, look, I have absolutely disagreed with a lot of content moderation decisions at Facebook. It sounds like Zuckerberg disagrees with them too. And you know what? Better late than never. It's better to recognize what you got wrong and pledge to do it differently than try to gaslight everyone to saying none of this censorship exists. What are you talking about? So I appreciate this letter. I'm glad he said it, and I hope the policies would be different in the future.
Right. I think that, Mark Zuckerberg might draw the line somewhere differently than the Biden-Harris administration would on a lot of these issues. I think the Hunter Biden laptop story, now that we have a lot of evidence about what was actually in the laptop, I can imagine a world where he regrets suppressing any news about the laptop. I can also imagine a world where he believes the COVID misinformation went too far, censoring, sarcastic posts, satire.
Yeah, I got to agree. This is absolutely fascism from the people who claim that they're out to protect everybody from fascism. It's interesting how that goes, isn't it? It's almost like an undercover cop.
I'm the king of the world. You will bow down, bitches.
That's what they want to say. That's what they want to tell us.
I'm the king of the world. You will bow down, bitches.
Things of that nature, people joking around. It's really hard for any kind of automated algorithm to tell the difference between what is satire and what is intentional misinformation. That's something that humans are much better at. AI is not quite there yet. But I can imagine he wishes he drew the line somewhere differently. But I still think Mark Zuckerberg is the kind of guy that does believe in some censoring of misinformation on the platform. But going the route of having independent fact checkers employed working full time, that's just an expense that I think a lot of social media companies need to have on their balance sheets. And it's something that I think originally they weren't accounting for because social media was kind of this website where you could connect with your friends. Now it's a place where people get news. And I'm sorry, but if you want that ad revenue, you're going to need to make that investment at this day and age. And let's not forget that X, when it was known as Twitter in 2020, was pushing vaccine misinformation stories. It was in the Philippines, as I mentioned earlier. But if you look at the death toll, it was under 10,000 at the beginning of this campaign that was reported by Reuters. Now it's just below.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I agree with everything that you guys are saying in the chat. Shout out to Tedra. Tedra says they had to push the juice on people. That's why they needed the censoring. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot that went into that. There was a lot that went into that. They needed everybody, for the most part, on the same page, believing the same narrative for certain things to work when it came to that.
50,000. Or at least that's where it was when they stopped collecting this data for the Philippines in October of 2021. So towards the end of this misinformation campaign about the vaccines. So it's just ridiculous that the American government can say, we want people to be healthy. This is a pandemic. We want to do things in the interest of the public's health. But then if we have political interests somewhere else abroad, which we have for many, many years in the Philippines, we're totally fine with doing away with that, not realizing we live in a global system. What if someone in the US goes on vacation in the Philippines, contracts the virus and brings it home? That affects the US population. This idea that the United States fighting for their interests in another country and fighting for different leadership in another country has no ramifications for the quality of life of Americans at home. It's either something they don't understand that that's a reality. I find it hard to believe the CIA doesn't understand that and the US military doesn't understand that. It's seemingly like they don't care. And so the misinformation coming from the government seemingly comes in the direction of a political party's interests in regard to the Hunter Biden laptop story. And in regard to COVID, I think there's probably.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Shout out to Black Free Thinker. Black Free Thinker says it's a money print grift. Yeah. Facts. If you guys agree with Black Free Thinker, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down.
Probably going to be some medium that struck of you can't post fake articles that look like they're real, portraying some scientific information.
Well, yeah.
But if someone's making jokes about the vaccine, those posts seemingly should fly.
Yeah, look, there's going to be some moderation on social media. Well, look, it's fine. There's different social media sites, and different sites can have different rules and different levels of moderation. I think the best thing is to put as much choice and control in the users and have different experiences across different platforms, or maybe even different settings for, how much exposure you want, even to political content at all. Maybe some people don't, just want to turn that off, and they should be able to customize their experience to match what they want. And the platforms can be responsive to the users. On most major platforms, there's going to be some level of moderation because most people actually they don't want censorship of contrarian political topics, but, they want persistent harassment filtered out of the site. They want spam taken down. They want those kinds of things. But the big point, I think, is that moderation should be decided on by the platform, should be in conversation with their users and delivering the best user experience. And if that's very maximal free speech on some sites, great. If that's something else on a different site, okay, whatever. But it just shouldn't be dictated by federal.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I agree 100%. Shout out to Mr. J. Mr. J says they should pay us to be fact checkers. We good at calling BS. Facts. I agree 100%. This is why I always tell anybody when there's new people that subscribe to the channel, binge watch all of the old videos and live streams. Watch all of them. Watch every single thing. Take notes. And then compare it to what's going on today. You know what I mean? One of the reasons why, believe it or not, that I actually do social media is for record keeping of stuff that I'm interested in. So then I can go back and take a look at it. Okay, this is how this was going back then, and this is how I feel about this. Okay, I see. You know what I'm saying? This is where I was at, 2 years ago. This is where I'm at today. Pretty consistent. Shout out to Manosphere Hall of Fame. Manosphere Hall of Fame says to Tedra, yes, and they now want to push other quote unquote on us, leading up to their big war upcoming. Facts. And we're going to be doing content talking about that. If you guys are not subscribed to the Rumble channel or not subscribed to the Twitch channel, please make sure you guys take a moment and go subscribe to the Rumble and the Twitch channels too. Because when we start talking about that stuff, you know what I'm saying? We're going to try to, we got to dilute it as much as possible. You know what I'm saying? And also, if you're not part of the Discord, hit that link that's pinned in the chat so you can join the Discord.
Bureaucrats who themselves ought to be constrained by the First Amendment. And the only other thing I wanted to mention here is Zuckerberg does I think he's making a political calculation as well. He had a phone call to Donald Trump right after the assassination saying he regretted some moderation of the picture that took place. He said he's not, giving money to the election-related organizations. He wants to be perceived as politically neutral. He wants the sites to be perceived as politically neutral. And I think that's probably a good business decision for him and will ultimately end up being a good decision from the standpoint of maximizing free speech on the platform.
So there's that. All right. There is that. So now Fox came out with a news clip where they're saying that this particular situation is a quote unquote win for free speech. Now, if you ask me, this is not a win for free speech. What this is an awareness building milestone, but this isn't a win for anything. I don't think that this is a win for anything. I think that this is an awareness milestone, but I don't think that this is a win for anything. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, this is an awareness milestone. It brings to light the issues that have been going on that people have speculated against for a very long time, right? However, nothing immediately is changing, and there's not really anything that makes me believe that the government is just going to turn and go the opposite direction on this and not continue to try to exert control over business assets. So it's good for bringing awareness. It's good for substantiating people's suspicions. But as far as this being a win, in order for this to be a win, what that would do is that would have to give Facebook and that would have to give people like us the advantage and more control. And nothing has happened that is doing that yet.
All right, Fox News alert this morning. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg feeling bad for caving to the Biden-Harris White House, who he admits pressured him and his company into censoring COVID content. Zuckerberg writing, quote, in 2021, senior officials at the Biden administration, including those from the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 related content, including humor, satire, and expressed significant frustration when we did not meet their demands. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. GOP Congresswoman Laurel Lee sits on the House Judiciary Committee, and this is a big moment for her. What do you take from this confession?
Well, first and foremost, this is a great victory for the First Amendment. For Mr. Zuckerberg to come out and acknowledge that information was suppressed about COVID, everything, when we saw President Trump and people like Governor DeSantis trying to share information with the public about the efficacy of therapeutics, about lockdowns and whether they were working, at the time they were vilified and information from people who had opinions was suppressed. And to see Mr. Zuckerberg acknowledging this is really important. It shows the lengths that the Biden administration went to try to shut this information down. And the other thing that he mentions in this letter that's really critical is an acknowledgement that the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed. And that's something that we have spent so much time in judiciary working on and trying to bring to light, is that we have 51 intelligence officers.
So now let me ask you guys this question. Should all the other media companies who took part in helping with this censorship, should they face some type of consequence too? If you guys think that they should face some type of consequence, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't, give me a thumbs down. Shout out to Tedra. Tedra says, I keep wondering why he waited until now to say this. I think he might actually be afraid that that if Trump happens to win and Trump gets into the White House and finds out that it was, Mark Zuckerberg had a lot to do with some of this stuff, not getting out and, election, and all that, then he might be worried about, some repercussions or some stuff that Trump might do or say. So I think Mark Zuckerberg is doing this. This is almost like a plea deal before getting caught doing something, if you ask me. I don't know. This is just speculation. This is just how I feel about it based on what I know. Which all I know is all you guys know, everything that the media's put out.
Basically lie to the American people and try to cast this as Russian disinformation when it wasn't. And that information was suppressed in the lead up to the election. So it's very important for us to be able to show, these are the real facts of what was going on then and the lengths to which this administration was going to try to hold back this information from the American people.
But remember, when the laptop was out there, President Trump was president. So somehow the challenging party had more sway with the FBI and other agencies than the one in power, which is bizarre. Meanwhile, the White House.
That's a great point, actually. How does that work? That's a really good point. How does that work, and what does that mean? That's a great point.
American people.
But remember, when the laptop was out there, President Trump was president. So somehow the challenging party had more sway with the FBI and other agencies than the one in power, which is bizarre. Meanwhile, the White House just given us this statement on this. When confronted with a deadly pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions to protect public health and safety. And our position has been clear.
Yeah. Shout out to Deneen. Deneen says the Democrats are the real gangsters. Listen, I'm going to tell you the perfect allegory for the Democrats. The Democrats are Teletubbies with AR-15s. They're Teletubbies with AR-15s. They're the fuzzy wuzzy Gestapo military. Real talk. You know what I'm saying?
Clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and our private actors should take into account their effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information they present. So if you bring up something like ivermectin, that's being irresponsible. In whose eyes? In some officials' eyes? In other people's eyes, it didn't. That's the big question. If you went against what they thought was right, then you're wrong until further notice. That's a bad precedent.
It absolutely is. I mean, the whole idea of the First Amendment is that it allows us to express contrary ideas, to bring those out into the public square and let the public get to the bottom of what's the correct information. And what's worse, history tells this story, and we now know what the data shows us.
Yeah, I got to agree. Shout out to Manosphere Hall of Fame. Manosphere Hall of Fame says, answer, the powers that be are nameless and high above any presidents whose names we know. Facts. And some of them might actually be presidents that we know, but they didn't get that power until after they were presidents. So there's that, right? Shout out to Unsung One. Unsung One said, Rob, you shook me out of the cloud with that one. Oh man, shout out to Black Free Thinker. Black Free Thinker said, love the Teletubby analogy. Facts, bro. Is it accurate? Literally just imagine a whole bunch of like purple Teletubbies, you know what I'm saying, with like tassels and you know what I'm saying, just whiskers, but they got like big AR-15s, just a Gestapo, just you know what I'm saying, you hurt my feelings, and then like you get the worst execution ever. That's the Democrats for real. You know what I'm saying? You made me feel terrible. Oh, you made me feel terrible. You know what we got to do now, and then they give you the worst death that you ever could imagine. Yeah, that's them. That's them. You know what I'm saying?
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the March of Dimes.
Cash rules everything around me. Queen, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
This is the hardest record out.
Silence. I ain't got no money, pie.
About the fact that there were effective therapeutics, the fact that it was appropriate to be prioritizing seniors and the vulnerable. So, not only was it wrong for them to try to suppress opposing viewpoints, the actual data that we now have related to the pandemic demonstrates that these positions they were suppressing, that many of them were actually correct, and that the public would have benefited from having them out there and getting the option to make their own choices.
Yeah. Now we know a lot of the so-called facts were wrong. Yesterday, you went over to Butler, Pennsylvania, because you're a member of the task force investigating the assassination attempt. That is the site of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. You haven't received everything you've requested. The whole committee hasn't. They've requested documents from the DHS, from the FBI, and others. So what was your takeaway from what you saw physically there and from what you expected to see?
One of the really key things about going to the site and seeing it is that you get the sense of exactly how small it is. This is not a large area. It's very rural. Even as a layperson, it's clear what the buildings are, what's in the area, and what needs to be secured. So it really underscores just how inexplicable this catastrophic security failure was, that this was allowed to happen. The other thing that is clear is that there were serious communication and coordination problems. State and local law enforcement are a big part of securing a site like this, of securing a rally, but it is evident evident from the investigation that we've been conducting already that there was a lack of communication and a lack of coordination. So one of the things we want to be sure we do is understand how that fell apart, because that's a key element to ensuring that this doesn't happen for future rallies while these protectees are still out on the trail.
And Congressman, we're in overtime, but we know nothing about the assassin. Why did they have to quickly cremate the body? We don't know how he made the IEDs. They say, intelligence experts say, they still haven't unencrypted his tech devices.
Well, that is the key information that is missing, that we're still needing to develop from the FBI, from Secret Service, is who was this kid? What was his motivation? Did he work alone? Did he work with someone else? That's what we're still missing as we're trying to pull information from that phone. So in the coming weeks, that will be one of the key focuses of the committee.
I wish people were more curious, like you guys are. Congresswoman, thanks so much.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that. I wish more people were interested. You know what I mean? This is some very important stuff here. Some very important stuff. Zuckerberg says White House pressured Facebook to censor some C-19 content during the pandemic. Now, what are they going to do to go back and make this right for people that might have lost their platforms or people that might have lost their channels, people that have had their credibility damaged as a result? How is it that your credibility can be damaged based on somebody's assessment of how you deal with C-19, right? But their credibility is not damaged for being wrong about everything and being wrong about what you were saying. There's no retribution for any of this. You know what I'm saying? Mark Zuckerberg says senior Biden administration officials pressured Facebook to censor some C-19 content during the pandemic and vowed that the social media giant would push back if it faced such demands again. Okay. Shout out to Black Bitcoin Key. Black Bitcoin Key said, what you're describing is preemptive damage control. That's Zuckerberg. Yeah, I agree. That's exactly what this is. Preemptive damage control. Absolutely. In a letter to Representative Jim Jordan, the Republican chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Zuckerberg acknowledges that officials, including those from the White House, repeatedly pressured Facebook for months to take down certain C-19 content, including humor and satire. Okay. The officials expressed lots of frustration when the company didn't agree, he said in the letter. Okay. I believe government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it, Zuckerberg wrote in the letter dated August 26 and posted on the committee's Facebook page and to its X account. The letter is the latest repudiation by Zuckerberg of efforts to target misinformation around the C-19 pandemic during and after the 2020 presidential election, particularly as allegations have emerged that some posts were deleted or restricted wrongly. So now here's my question. How are they going to get that stuff back onto Facebook? Wishful thinking, huh? I also think we made some choices that, with the benefit of hindsight and new information, we wouldn't make today, he said, without elaborating. We're ready to push back if something like this happens again. In response, the White House said in a statement that when confronted with a deadly pandemic, this administration encouraged responsible actions to protect public health and safety. Our position has been clear and consistent. We believe tech companies and other private actors should take into account the effects their actions have on the American people while making independent choices about the information that they present. They don't say your job is to facilitate the autonomy of the American people. They do not say your job is to facilitate the autonomy of the American people. Basically, what they said is your job is to make sure that they do what we tell them to do. Make sure that they work with the information that's given that we give to them. Experts warn this year's U.S. election could be swamped by misinformation on social media with the proliferation of artificial intelligence and other tools to produce false news stories and contents that could mislead voters. Facebook in early 2021 appended what Zuckerberg called labels with credible information to post about C-19. So now, mind you, none of this stuff was even credible. I want you guys to understand where we're at here. The credibility verifiers are not indicative of credibility. How long have I been saying that? The credibility verification is not guaranteed credibility. You know what I'm saying? That's after it moved in April of 2020, just as the virus had led global shutdowns and radical changes in everyday life to warn users who shared information about C-19. Because the more that you keep people out of the loop and the more that you keep people scared based on not knowing everything, the more you'll be able to keep them compliant with your program because they won't have any basis to ask you anything to resist what it is that you're trying to sell them on. That's all this is. Conservatives have long derided Facebook and other major tech companies as favoring liberal priorities and accused them of censorship. Well, I guess that's substantiated now, isn't it? I don't think that we can call that an accusation anymore. I think those accusations have been substantiated for the most part. Zuckerberg has tried to change the company's perception on the right, going on podcaster Joe Rogan's show in 2022. So I want you guys to understand where Joe Rogan fits in. Appealing to the right, you don't go to to the government. You go to Joe Rogan, which is wild. You know what I'm saying? Zuckerberg has tried to change the company's perception on the right, going on podcaster Joe Rogan's show in 2022 and complimenting Republican nominee Donald Trump's response to an assassination attempt as quote unquote badass. Okay. He sent Monday's letter to the House Judiciary Committee, whose chairman, Jim Jordan, is a longtime Trump ally. Zuckerberg also said he would no longer donate money to widen election access for voters throughout the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, the company that runs the philanthropy for him and his wife, Priscilla Chan. The company previously donated $400 million to help local election offices prepare voters for the 2020 presidential election, with funds used for protective equipment to prevent the spread of C-19 at polling sites, drive-through voting locations, and equipment to process mail ballots. I know that some people believe this work benefited one party over the other, despite an analysis showing otherwise, he said. My goal is to be neutral, and I am not to play a role one way or the other, or even appear to be playing a role. So I don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle. Okay? So yeah, man, this is real. Facts. Shout out to Black Free Thinker. Bro, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I always ask that question. Where in the world do you see a thriving leftist, liberal, socialist, communist utopia? Where do you see that at? Is there one that's doing well? I don't think that there is. I don't think that there is one. Mark Zuckerberg coming clean on Facebook censorship matters because Harris Walls would amp up the speech controls. Who's to say that they haven't done it already? Who's to say that they haven't done this already? Plenty of folks have a now he tells us take on Mark Zuckerberg's letter and regretting Facebook censorship of C-19 and the post-October of 2020 Hunter laptop scoops. But the Meta CEO setting the record straight absolutely matters because the Biden-Harris Walls crowd and forces behind them are still all in on social media censorship in the name of quote unquote fighting misinformation. And again, what we see here, what people need to understand is that this isn't fighting misinformation. This is basically just fighting the information that we don't want. That's all that this is. If you guys agree, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down. Shout out to my man Bronze of God. Make sure y'all show my man Bronze of God some love. Throw some flames, some radiation emojis, some ducks in the chat for Bronze of God. Bronze of God says, shit, play that blade, Rob. Look, I got two of them. Two for the price of 5. Here we go.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
And then we got the organization funding. But my computer wants to act stupid. There we go.
How do you think that we fund this organization, huh? We're not exactly the march of dimes.
Definitely appreciate it, bro. Make sure y'all show Bronze of God some love. Throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for my man Bronze of God with the $5 super chat. Yeah, shout out to Win Loser Rug. Win Loser Rug said 2 for 5. Rob went back to the 05 prices. Facts. We charging Reggie prices over here. We charging Reggie prices over here. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, as is the left worldwide, from Canada to Brazil to France to Britain. Zuck's letter to the House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan basically admits what the committee proved in hearings a year ago. Kamala and Joe's administration pressured Facebook to censor C-19 related content that questioned the government's line, quashing not just opinion, but everything from satire to 100% science. And this is where you get the warm and fuzzy Gestapo. You know what I'm saying? Your nice little friendly, comfy, you know what I'm saying? Dressed up like an animal, rainbow flag, pink pastel, soldier bot with an AR-15. You know what I'm saying? Facebook bent to that pressure. Facebook also suppressed our laptop reporting, highly relevant to the 2020 election. Shout out to B1 First. Right. Right. If you guys agree with B1 First, give me a thumbs up. If y'all disagree, give me a thumbs down. So now here it says the last, incidentally, was covered up on purpose by the West's quote-unquote disinformation experts, including at the FBI. Long before we got the laptop, they were conditioning U.S. media and social media to expect a Russian disinformation dump centered on Hunter's sleazy dealings in Ukraine. Now, how many people saw the content that I did about this particular situation? Because I got a whole body of content about this. Did anybody see my content about Hunter Biden and all that? If you guys haven't, let me know. And then when the live stream, after the live is over, for the replay viewers, I'll put the cards for those videos into the stream so you can check them out as you get back here. Reinforcing it was the Biden-Harris campaign's own disinformation effort, ginning up the Spies Who Lie letter. And it was all preceded by the Hillary Clinton campaign's disinfo success in creating the supposed Russiagate scandal by paying for utterly made-up opposition research on Donald Trump. The New York Times and Washington Post won Pulitzer prizes for their roles in advancing that total false narrative. Yo, that's wild. Yeah, I gotta agree. Shout out to Black Free Thinker. Black Free Thinker says, I'm not cool with armed snowflakes, especially since this has driven far too many a mass shooter. I'm not cool with the head of the executive branch being led by such a person. Hashtag sorry, not sorry. Facts. I agree. If you guys agree with Black Free Thinker, throw some flames in the chat. I agree 100%, bro. Disinformation is a real thing. It goes back to long before Vladimir Putin's professional forebears fabricated this here, which no comment. But the self-appointed disinfo experts across the West who claim that the way to fight is to let them censor the rest of us are utter frauds. They have their grip on the UK's Labour Party, the Democrats here in America, and the other left-of-center parties across the West. Under Harris and Biden, they briefly got their Ministry of Truth in the Department of Homeland Security's Disinformation Governance Board. And they did have a White House office with branches across the U.S. Intelligence Committee and a guest star role by Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is now sick, but I don't think he's quarantining, dedicated to the vast social media censorship exposed by the Twitter files and Jordan's committee. And we're going to be talking about Dr. Fauci coming up pretty soon. That's interesting. Shout out to Deneen. If you guys, and you already know what time it is, Deneen. If you guys agree with that comment, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. Democrats on that committee, by the way, used their time in the hearings to attack the journalists who'd exposed the Big Brother feds. And have you seen the video of the VP nominee, Tim Walz, falsely explaining there's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, especially around our democracy? Again, that's very interesting. So, yes, it absolutely matters that Mark Zuckerberg has come clean and taken steps so that Facebook won't get fooled again, because the experts are still busy plotting how to grab more power if Harris and Walz win this November and are looking to make that happen. Now, here goes my question. Knowing everything that you know now about this Facebook situation and how Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are explicitly linked to it, my question for you guys is what Mark Zuckerberg just exposed about the Biden administration and censorship enough to get you off the couch in 2024? And when you get up, what you plan on doing? Or you going to just stay there chilling? You know what I'm saying? Kick back. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what you're going to do. Shout out to everybody who contributed to the stream. I appreciate. I hope you guys been enjoying the content. Like I said, your boy been going overtime trying to, you know what I'm saying, make sure I got y'all everything chopped up and clipped up and, you know what I'm saying, all nice and crispy for y'all. So hopefully everything is cool. I want to shout out all of the stream sponsors. All right. Make sure you guys throw some flames, money bags in the chat for the stream sponsors, because without them, there's no me. Also, make sure that you guys listen through the outro until you get to the end. It'll take you into the next scheduled content. Make sure you hit the bell icon over there. Make sure you hit the thumbs up over there, and make sure you drop a comment in the chat over there. All right. Shout out to Brooklyn Queen. Make sure y'all show Brooklyn Queen some love. Shout out to DSB. DSB killed it. Make sure y'all just flood the chat with spam for DSB. Shout out to my man DSB. Definitely appreciate it. DSB going ham, as always. Funding the organization, growing the organization. Definitely appreciate it. Make sure y'all show DSB some love. Look at that. DSB out here killing it. Shout out to you, bro. I definitely appreciate it. That's why I got to try to make sure I always give y'all the best. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Jerry. Make sure y'all show Jerry some love. Throw some flames, some radiation emoji, and some ducks in the chat for Jerry. Definitely appreciate it. Shout out to my man Jay Bird, OG channel member. And that's one thing that you guys will notice around here. You guys see, it's not one of those channels where there's a whole bunch of blue badges. No offenses to the blue badges. We got a whole bunch of OG badges. Probably OG badges that you don't even see on other channels that you didn't even know existed. Like that one, the color purple right there. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to my man Black Free Thinker. I definitely appreciate it. So I will be cutting up some clips. Who knows if I get time between some clips, or if I get kind of stuck between a workload, I might put some stuff together and just do a live, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, whatever, maybe we'll see. All right. I appreciate you guys being here. And as always, ladies and gentlemen,